Chapter 301. Can you spare the lives of my Dai clan? Dai Tianling felt torn as the familiar, ruthless face with golden hair appeared before him again. Your Jisho Chamber of Commerce is truly unprecedented. His sigh echoed through the empty throne hall. He stared up at the vaulted dome as if trying to see through the tide of change sweeping the continent. Before absolute power, all struggles looked trivial. He traced the claw marks indented into the throne's armrest, marks left by the first Star Luo Great Emperor in his battle with the Evil Eyes White Tiger, the same battle that had fixed the Dai clan's place in the Spirit Ring hunting order. That glory now seemed to dissolve beneath an onrush of steel. Hu Sha Tian watched the emperor quietly, a complicated gleam in his eyes. "This is the general trend," he said at last. "If your majesty still expects the Jisho Chamber of Commerce to behave like Shrek Academy or the Tang sect, hiding arrogantly while meddling in the affairs of the three empires, you are greatly mistaken. Sun Moon Federation, Douling Empire, Star Luo Empire, 3 continents, 3 dominions. The Sun Moon Federation already held most of the chamber's power and could be unified at a stroke. Rumors from the Douling Empire had arrived. Golden Claw God had slaughtered the Douling imperial family and seized control, only awaiting the East Sea Legion to take the surrendered cities and armies. Now only the Star Luo Empire remained standing in any meaningful sense. "Brother Hu, can you spare the lives of my Dai clan?" Dai Tianling asked, his voice raw. He knew, with the clarity of a man finally seeing the play for what it was, that he had been fooled. How could someone as powerful as Hu truly submit? It had been a show. By pitting the loyal soldiers of the 3 empires against each other, the Jisho Chamber of Commerce could claim the planet with little cost. "Can you spare our bloodline?" he begged. "Is that acceptable?" Dai Tianling's strategic mind, once quick and bright, had narrowed to a single desperate wish to save his family. Hu Shatian, still in human guise, flickered with an emotion he most hated: betrayal. Though he had never sworn fealty to the Star Luo Empire, he had led imperial troops out, draining the empire's loyal forces. Hu Shatian sighed. "From now on, the Dai clan will be servants of my lord. From the moment of birth, you will be branded, bound to serve forever." Dai Tianling's fingers clenched on the armrest until his knuckles showed white. For an imperial line that had endured 10,000 years, that sentence meant total subjugation, household slaves for generations. He offered a bitter smile. What choice did he have? Refuse, and his clan would perish with the Star Luo Empire. He rose slowly. The golden robe he wore seemed heavier under the dying sun. His gaze swept past Hu Shatian to the sinking light beyond the palace windows, as if searching the last vestiges of a 10,000-year foundation. Hu did not press him. Mottled sunlight fell across the mechanical face before him. 10,000 years of heritage. Dai's fingertips lingered on the tiger relief carved into the armrest, the emblem of the Star Luo dynasty. For a moment, he saw his armored ancestors flashing in memory, and he accepted the end. Then, a sudden, calculated thought crossed his face. He forced a smile. "Brother Hu, show me your true form." The twilight in the great hall threw long shadows across the marbles. Dai's fingers rubbed the dark gold dragon pattern on the armrest. The raised grooves had been worn by countless imperial palms. Hu Shatian's golden hair shifted though there was no wind. A cold metallic sheen flashed between the locks. He pressed a seam at his forehead, and his human skin withdrew like mercury, revealing a silver-blue armored layer beneath. Gears along his spine clicked with precise rhythm. Particle recombination uncoiled a 3-meter-tall form. A streamlined tiger-like war mech, shoulders forming sharp hexagons, palm cannons pulsing a faint blue energy. Dai Tianling's pupils narrowed as the war mecha king unveiled himself. He saw a purple crystal core floating in the mech's chest, and inside that multifaceted crystal swirled the phantom of an ancient feral beast. Behind Hu, wing components unfolded slowly. Each metallic tremor left brief ripples in the air, the runes on the wings warping space itself. The protective grand array embedded beneath the imperial floor lit up, but Dai raised a hand and halted the defenses. He stepped down the dais, the gold-embroidered soles of his boots crushing the spirit-guided circuits in the tiles. He stopped 3 steps from the mech, close enough to see his own haggard reflection in its compound eyes. "This is your true tiger," he breathed, and then reached out to touch the cold armor. The metal's chill made him shiver. "Come, grant me an honorable death." He had made his choice. The Dai clan would be branded into servitude from birth, bound to a lord he no longer ruled. As clan head, he had done what he could. Now he would do what monarchs sometimes do. He would die as a monarch. The last light of sunset spilled through stained glass, painting the imperial robe and the tiger relief in shifting colors. He let the memories of glorious campaigns and ancestor heroes pass through him, then folded his hands. A brief shade of something like nostalgia crossed Hu Shatian's mechanical eyes. "You will not suffer," he said in a deep voice. Storm Nebula split. The mech's arm hummed to life, a high-frequency vibration. Its clawed blades pierced Dai Tianling's back in an instant. There was no blood, no tearing organs. The Storm Nebula split, dissolved cellular structure on contact. Dai Tianling's body disintegrated into fine particles like weathered sandstone, and the imperial robe, empty of its wearer, fluttered gently to the floor. Far away in Shrek City, Shrek Academy lay in ruins, and most of the people had fled. Not everyone wished to die with an ancient power whose time had ended. On Sea God Island, Yunming stood in a pavilion overlooking the sea. Below, Long Yewe, Ya Li, Tang Wulin, and others waited in tense readiness. The glazed tiles of the Sea God Pavilion reflected fragmented evening light. Above, the sky swelled with blood-red clouds, a wide wound torn across the heavens by an invisible hand. Yunming's white robe fluttered. The Qingqian divine spear in his grasp hummed with restless unease. Chapter 302. If you don't want to be decent, then you'll be forced to be decent. The setting sun bled red across the shattered walls of Shrek Academy. Once majestic halls had been reduced to a scattering of broken stone pillars, their weathered columns jutting toward the twilight like the gnarled fingers of an old man. Half buried in the rubble, a broken plaque reading Sea God Pavilion lay at an angle, its gold lacquer flaking and stained with rust. A dragon's roar tore through the air. As the sound wave passed, loose stones trembled. A silver light tore open the clouds, and Gu Yuana stepped from the void. Her 3,000 silver hairs fell like a waterfall, each strand flickering with elemental flame. Her left eye burned with fire and congealed ice. Her right eye glowed a brilliant purple as elemental energy flowed through it. The primordial powers of the Ice and Fire Dragon Kings coalesced into twin, two-colored dragons that swam around her. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth converged into her palm like countless rivers rushing to the sea, forming a chaotic sphere of light, the aura of a half-stepped dragon god. A bolt of lightning flashed in the southeastern sky. A crescent moon bloomed in daylight, and a figure stood upon its disk, a blade held at his side. Huo Wuji's phoenix-shaped eyes narrowed. Purple lightning danced through his silver hair. His pure white long blade had not yet been fully drawn, but its aura had already torn through the clouds, revealing an inverted galaxy behind it. The blade hummed like a phoenix's cry. Broken swords across the area answered in mournful keening. From the west a tide rose. Hai Wuliang arrived, walking on water, his twin halberds spinning in an X. Each rotation sent a phantom wave into the sky, forming an inverted C. As his gilded hair fluttered, the faint silhouette of a deep-sea giant Kun appeared. He skimmed wave crests with his toes, and the very foundation of the ruins rocked like a ship. The north wind howled. Yun Taishi's yellow hair stood on end as he summoned a thunderstorm from the 9 heavens with his left palm and condensed 10,000 years of frost with his right finger. Where those two extremes met, space shattered like glass. The instant his boots hit the ground, the rubble within the immediate vicinity lifted and began to disintegrate into dust under the clash of ice and fire Ganqi. Formation, rise. Chen Zhou's black robe whipped around him as he appeared, standing on an alchemy matrix. Each step left a blue rune in the void. They wove together into a vast net that spread across the sky. He looked down over the battlefield with eyes that seemed to turn like a celestial disk, his stare piercing the present world and touching the very origins of law. Where the 5 heavy pressures met, space above the ruins buckled. The remaining Shrek emblem drifted up in the chaotic energy, but before it could rise a single head's height, Gu Yuana's dragon breath reduced it to a wisp that dissipated on the wind. Yunming watched those 5 towering figures with a bitter smile, memories flashing back. He remembered how his Shrek Academy had once descended upon others in this same terrifying manner. All the teachers and elders of my Shrek Academy are willing to cripple our cultivation, he called out, voice thin in the roaring elemental currents. Can you spare a lineage for my Shrek Academy? He understood the answer even before it came. Once the strongest on the Douluo plane, he was now only a pseudo-god-level existence against 5 true god-level powerhouses. He could see no path to survival. A cold, mocking smile flickered in Guyuena's silver pupils. Spare your lineage? She repeated. 10,000 years ago, she said, when you hunted soul beasts, did you ever think to leave my clan a way to live? At the words, her palm flipped, and the chaotic sphere of light in her hand expanded. Elemental power from heaven and earth surged, and a dark purple barrier enveloped the ruined academy, cutting off the last threads of life force. Crippling your cultivation? She said, as if tasting the word. Her fingertip brushed the void. Do you still have a choice? Space warped. Yunming felt his spirit power drained by some law-like force. He reached for the Qingqian divine spear, the spirit that had accompanied him his whole life and had developed into a near-divine partner. But the spear began to crumble under that invisible pressure. With a dry crack, the spearhead broke. Yunming's face went ashen. A cold sank through him like falling into an abyss. Pain exploded through his body as something invisible tore his spirit bone from him. He staggered to one knee amid the ruins as centuries-fused spirit bones were ripped free, floating like shrapnel picked out by invisible tweezers, trailing threads of blood. You are not worthy of possessing the power of my soul beast clan, Guyuena declared. Her left eye flashed ethereal blue and crimson. Her right burned purple as the might of the Silver Dragon King swelled. Cracks spiderwebbed across Yunming's skin. Nair? Someone cried out. Are you Nair? Yali pleaded, unfolding the wings of her Angel of Prayer spirit to enfold Yunming like a moth drawn to flame. Tears streaked down her face as she looked up at Guyuena. Her voice was weak in the face of the chaotic elemental tide. She spread her seraphim phantom, but the fragmented light feathers were torn to photon dust before they could touch him. The angel's healing was a candle against a hurricane compared to the dragon god's power. Guyuena hesitated for the briefest instant. Inside her, beneath the Dragon King's will, lay memories of Guyue and of Nair, the girl who had once apprenticed under Yunming at Shrek Academy. But now, in the present, she was Guyuena, the silver dragon and co-lord of the soul beasts. Teacher, she said softly, I will grant you a decent death. She summoned the silver dragon spear into her hand. Its thrust traced a path like a falling Milky Way. Yunming saw, for an instant, a rainy day 12 years ago, the small silver-haired girl clinging to his sleeve, her purple crystalline eyes full of starlight. He had taught her the ultimate technique, Qingtian sun shooting. The last fragments of the Qingqian divine spear flared to defend their master, but vaporized the moment they met the dragon spear. Yunming cradled Yali tightly as the cold edge took his back. Tang Wulin's scream tore the air. Long Yewei's soul core flared and exploded, and the sound closest to Yunming was the crisp snap of his own spine. The silver blade pierced his chest. At the same time, Yali's prayer, "May all beings be safe," left her lips. She stared at the spear protruding from Yunming, and her seraphim spirit erupted in a light beyond precedent. Guyuena's pupils narrowed. The dragon spear had been momentarily solidified by the purity of those wishes. In the instant that followed, Yali broke through the 99th level limit. The Angel of Prayer reached the pinnacle of the plane. If the God realm still existed, given the weight of those wishing hearts, she could have ascended to godhood on the spot. Mingge. Yali cupped Yunming's aging face with both hands, her burning soul core trying to hold the moment of his dying suspended, as if using her own life to stall death's scythe above his head. Tears of light fell from her eyes, each drop blooming into a blossom of healing on the ruins. Chen Zhou, watching from the alchemy matrix, did not enjoy such melodrama. Granting a decent end would have been extraordinary mercy. But if they refused that mercy, then they would be forced. Since you don't want to be decent, then you'll be forced to be decent, he said. Like lightning tearing the sky, Huo Wuji dove from the crescent moon disk. His white robe flared as he finally unsheathed his long blade, Judgment. The blade's arc did not cut in a straight line, but in a burning refraction. light bending and splitting as it descended, an execution delivered in a dozen incandescent slices. Chapter 303, The Time Has Come, Heavenly Feather Dragon Dance. The last ray of the setting sun shattered beneath the blade's gleam, and for a moment the world seemed to lose its color. Mingge! Kaiyuer, the silver moon Douluo, cried out, her voice a howl of grief as fierce as any battle cry. Her withered fingers clawed at the void, but her titled Douluo-level silver moon spirit could only spark a few dying embers against Huowuji's blade light. The old woman who had guarded Shrek for over 200 years suddenly straightened her stooped back. The sharp spirit of her youth flashed across her wrinkled face. Her silver moon true body flared and collided with the judgment blade light. At that moment, Tang Wulin finally tore free of the spatial confinement. His right arm's golden dragon claw surged, the dark gold dreadclaw and the golden dragon spear, their razor edges alive, pierced simultaneously toward Huowuji's back. But the blade light that had severed the sky twisted like a living thing and wrapped around his spirit. The Golden Dragon King felt every muscle cry out under the blade's chi erosion, as if metal itself were eating him away. The first to fall was Long Yewei. The Sea God Pavilion Elder's twin spirits dissolved into colored foam the instant they left her body. She stumbled, reaching to catch Kaiyuer, but an icy crimson bloom opened on her chest, Yun Taishi's frost true intent blossoming within her blood. The last thing she saw were Hai Wuliang's twin halberds cleaving down. The halberd light drove the ruins of the Shrek inner court to sink Thrizang. Shrek Academy was gone. Ah! Why? Nair, Guyu. Why? Blood reddened Tang Wulin's vision. In that moment, the cold, ruthless silver-haired woman blurred and twisted in his mind into the two faces he knew best. His roar broke apart in the surrounding chaos of energy. The golden dragon spear vibrated violently in his hand. The dark patterns along its shaft lit up in sequence, like a great dragon flaring one last time to life. Blood streamed from his left eye, and tiny golden scales split open at the corner of his right eye. The Golden Dragon King's bloodline was shredding the human shell around it. Alas! A sigh reached out from the void. Tang Hao, the pseudo-plane master, Tang Wulin's grandfather and Tang San's father, materialized, helpless and gray-faced. He had wanted to take Tang Wulin to the world's core and hide from Chen Zhou and his forces. He had not expected Chen Zhou to strike so soon. He had assumed such a huge operation would be gradual, not a sudden, continent-spanning sweep. Who could have guessed that the Heaven Dew and Star Luo continents had already fallen, and that within days the Sun-Moon Federation could sweep across the Douluo continent? Tang Hao had only hoped to spirit his unreliable grandson away, to buy time. Maybe Tang San would return with the God Realm and end the rebellion. Hey, I've been waiting for you. Chen Zhou's chuckle cut across the void. Unseen by most, countless alchemy runes had been carved across this world, forming arrays that sealed heaven and earth. Chen Zhou had delayed the final unification because of one unstable variable, Tang Hao. As the Plane Master's usurped identity, Tang Hao could, in theory, traverse the entire plane at will. Even if Huowuji or Hai Wuliang could kill Tang Hao, they could not stop him if he chose to flee. Worse, if pushed too far, Tang Hao might detonate the world core the plane had nurtured for tens of millions of years. So Chen Zhou had waited until he could bind Tang Hao completely. Now the moment had arrived. Cyan patterns in the void shrank and congealed into an inverted bowl alchemy matrix. Tang Hao's translucent figure froze within the cage. Astonishment warred with fury on his withered face. He broke into bitter laughter. You, an ignorant junior, dare attack me? Tang Hao's voice was a mix of scorn and helplessness. In pure spirit cultivation, he was still far above Chen Zhou, but Chen Zhou had never relied solely on spirit power. He had mastered alchemy in a previous life, alchemy that could reshape a world, heaven and earth refinement. Chen Zhou's soul eyes flared crimson gold. The invincible aura of the Supreme Hall, long dormant, reignited. In his mental world, the four alchemy runes, wind, fire, earth, and water, interwove, feeding endless will to this awakened Supreme Soul. The energy amethyst inside Tang Hao emptied like a breached reservoir. The accumulating pure power poured out as a roaring tide. Tang Hao threw his spirit torrent against the alchemy matrix, as if smashing into a web. The cyan patterns trembled, their ripples spreading through the plane's spatial structure. For a heartbeat, Tang Hao hesitated, and then the time truly came. A sword cry split the air. Lightning and thunder swept the scene, and a cold so absolute it seemed to congeal things struck afterward. Heavenly Feather Dragon Dance. High above, Yun Taishi narrowed his eyes. A chill rolled out from him, both of his true intents locked onto Tang Hao. The heavy sword behind him unfolded. One blade he gripped in his teeth, its hilt clenched between his jaw, the other he held in his right hand. With that impossible posture, he became a living storm. In the ruined, war-torn machine beast continent, the mech tribe had always been at odds with the beast clans, born with different strengths and limits. Beast warriors, who continually broke through their shackles and reached the apex, became war kings. To face such opponents, the mech pioneers devised combined techniques, coordinated skills of two highly compatible warriors that could lock down and annihilate a war king. The combined technique required two minds, two true intents, working as one. Yun Taishi was a singular genius in Energy City. He stood as the leader of both the Lightning and Ice tribes because he had mastered both fields like no other. He had studied, practiced, and finally perfected the Ice tribe's inherited art, the Breaking Void Ice Chop. Then, against all precedent, he fused the two tribes' arts into a single devastating combined technique, all performed by one man. He executed the Heavenly Feather Dragon Dance alone. The lightning, the ice, the twin intents, all converged. The cold sharpened into a blade of winter. The thunder was a hammer. Tang Hao, locked in the alchemy matrix and battered by Tang Wulin's desperate counterattack, now faced a strike meant to sever will from world. The world around them dimmed beneath the onslaught. The last threads of resistance trembled as the Heavenly Feather Dragon Dance descended. Chapter 304, Xuanli Wants That. Countless ice crystals condensed into swords in the clouds, blue-white arcs of lightning coiling around their blades in spirals. Yun Taishi unfolded mechanical wings from his back. Each metal feather reflected a different elemental glow. When the greatsword fell, the space itself split into a strange dichotomy, the left half freezing into a solid azure glacier, the right half raging into a silver-white thunderstorm. Tang Hao's feet sank into the void. This pseudo-plane master stared in shock. He could no longer mobilize the plane's power. He could do nothing but watch as the sword light, a fusion of extreme cold and violent thunder, slashed toward his head. Pushed to desperation, the old man's clear sky hammer suddenly swelled. Its phantom swelled to the heavens, and 9 blood-red spirit rings burst into a crimson wheel at the hammerhead. Twin swords, greatsword, thunderstorm, and cold current, heaven-feathered dragon slaying dance. Boom! Ice and thunder braided together as the heaven-feathered dragon slaying dance struck down like divine retribution. The clear sky hammer's phantom that Tang Hao had expanded split with a harsh, metallic shriek the instant it met the sword light. His 9 blood-red spirit rings, transformed into that light wheel, crumbled inch by inch under the attack, like glazed glass shattered when frozen brittle. Frost crawled up the hammer, instantly freezing his arms, while the thunderstorm mercilessly ripped through his already fragile plane power barrier. Impossible! Tang Hao roared, but his voice was swallowed by the entwined cold and thunder. A tremendous force hit him. He was hurled backward and slammed into Chen Zhou's alchemy matrix. Though Tang Hao's pseudo-plane master status allowed him to channel plane energy for combat, Chen Zhou's alchemy matrix had already seized his control authority. Azure alchemical runes wrapped around him, crawling over his body like shackles and locking his surging spirit power like a dam, leaving it unable to move. Tang Hao spat blood, staring at Chen Zhou with disbelief and hatred. "You!" The greatsword descended, cleaving Tang Hao from head to toe. Alchemy chains shot out from the void, plunging into his bisected body. "A plane master is also a decent material," Chen Zhou said with a faint chuckle, the War King Token appearing in his palm. A dark golden radiance burst from Tang Hao's split form. It wrapped half of a brilliant crystal, within it faint flows of mountains and rivers, the portion of the plane's origin Tang Hao had stolen. Trying to escape, Chen Zhou's left hand closed. 5 dark purple pillars of light sprang up from the ground, and as his alchemist's sleeves fluttered, chains streamed from the tops of the pillars to form a net in the air. The moment the plane crystal struck those chains, the sky dimmed, as if the plane itself shivered. Chen Zhou's expression remained calm. He lightly gestured, and a spatial rift channel opened from the slightly improved Machine Beast continent embedded in the War King token. "Brother, are you looking for Xuanli for something?" A soft, sweet voice asked through the rift. Xuanli floated out, curiosity painting her features as she took in the scene. Born as a fractured star god from the world core and inherently linked to part of the planet's authority, her gaze locked on the plain crystal the instant she appeared. Her instincts screamed that devouring that crystal would grant her true completeness. Her eyes flared with golden light, and her small hand reached toward it without restraint. "Brother." Her voice trembled with yearning and a touch of coquettishness. "Xuanli wants that." Chen Zhou, looking at his dearest disciple, had no objections. The incomplete plane origin, capable of commanding part of the plane's authority, rightly belonged to Xuanli. Back when the god realm still existed, Tang San, as a god king, had violated rules by concealing his divine-level parents, Tang Hao and Ah Yin, in the world core region and repeatedly wearing down the world core's sentience with divine force. If Chen Zhou hadn't intervened and disrupted that plan, the plane might have ended up controlled by those two thieves. Crack! Countless runic chains contracted and dragged the struggling half of the plane crystal before Xuanli. The girl opened her cherry-red mouth. The crystal dissolved into flowing golden light and drilled into her throat. Her snow-white skin bloomed with mountain and river patterns, and continental plates drifted in the depths of her pupils. Ugh! Xuanli curled in sudden pain, clutching Chen Zhou's neck. The plane origin forced itself into her existing star core. The collision sent sparks of energy that tore a dozen wounds across her back, each wound a tiny star being born and dying. Chen Zhou formed an alchemist seal with one hand, his pupils lit with lava-like patterns. Green motes of light appeared on his fingertips and mended the torn wounds one by one as if stitching a ragged cloth. Xuanli whimpered and writhed, while silver-white starlight began to sprout from her hair tips. Mountain ranges and ley veins trembled, clouds churned, and the seas rose in roaring waves. The entire plain answered the birth of its new master. Cheers rose, a chorus of celebration. The authority that had always belonged to Xuanli was now restored to her. The being in Chen Zhou's arms had become the complete innate divinity, star god Xuanli. Light burst from her like a supernova, so brilliant that everyone shielded their eyes. Her suspended form elongated, the silhouette of a 12-year-old girl stretched into a maiden within the luminous veil. Waist-length silver-white hair laced with stardust flowed behind her, each strand seeming to carry the weight of mountains. "Brother." The newborn star god looked at her translucent hands, lines on her palms mapping the motions of continental plates. When she blinked, phantom suns, moons, and stars flickered in her pupils. Xuanli still feels like something's missing. Tired, Xuanli buried her head against Chen Zhou's chest. In the concept of a star god, there is no growing up, only changes of form, but Chen Zhou understood what she meant. The world core had been occupied by Ah Yin. Chen Zhou's intervention had left that occupation as an empty shell, forcing Ah Yin to accept the world's instinct and act as an interface, a converter sorting chaotic cosmic energy. One of the world core's essential functions is that conversion. It interacts with and orders chaotic energy so the plane's heaven and earth energy remains balanced. To occupy the world core, an entity must erode the sentience born within it, but they cannot completely destroy that sentience, for it must still function as the converter's heart. Chen Zhou's voice was soft as he explained this to Xuanli, already planning how they would reconcile the world core's vacancy and the lingering presence of Ah Yin. Xuanli listened, her expression shifting from pained to resolute as the new star god absorbed what had happened and prepared for the tasks still ahead. Chapter 305, The Tang Clan. It's better if they all die. 2 millennia ago, Tang San devised a plan. Use an external, incomplete spiritual essence to shoulder the world core's status and authority, allowing Ah Yin to enjoy its power without bearing responsibility. The golden ancient tree became that vessel. But because Chen Zhou had created a star god, the golden ancient tree, being the last vestige of the world core's spiritual essence, detached itself. Caught at a critical moment, was completely trapped inside the empty shell of the world core, reduced to a mere converter of energy. It was, in the end, a failure, more lost than gained. Chen Zhou looked toward Guyuena and said softly, "I hope when I come out, I can see a complete you." Without waiting for her reply, he tore open a spatial rift and walked toward the world core region. Guyuena's face was unreadable. She understood his meaning well enough. He sought to devour and fuse the Golden Dragon King bloodline within Tang Wu Lin. It was possible, and she was willing, but a melancholic ache lingered. The madness of that recent night haunted her, and she felt she could never occupy even a small corner of Chen Zhou's heart. As Chen Zhou vanished into the rift, the stagnant killing intent across the battlefield erupted. Guyena's silver hair whipped in the wind as platinum scales crept over her skin. With each step, she imprinted elemental lotus seals on the ruins, and the Dragon Clan's vertical pupils locked onto the still-struggling Tang Wu Lin. "Why?" Tang Wu Lin roared, kneeling in a pool of blood, the golden dragon spear buried deep in the ground. Golden dragon scales crawled uncontrollably up his right arm. Pain seared from the dragon core sealed in his spine, the Golden Dragon King's origin responding to its true co-ruler. Hai Wu Liang crossed his twin halberds in a flash to block a sudden cold light. From the remains of the eternal heaven, Ling Zichen unleashed the last humanoid weapon, this mad scientist linked to dozens of tubes, his mechanical heart pumping dark green liquid energy. "Master said not to kill researchers," he gasped. Yun Taishi frowned, blade still pressed to the humanoid's throat. But he didn't say anything about dismantling toys. Huo Wuji's white robe billowed like surf as the blade of judgment split into 3,000 streams of fire, shredding Ling Zichen's mechanical wings into metallic dust. The green liquid spraying from broken tubes hissed and corroded the ground. In the bloody sunset, the shattered golden dragon spear trembled violently. Tang Wu Lin's arched back looked like a dying dragon. Golden scales had climbed from his neck to behind his ears. His fingers dug into cracked floor tiles, each knuckle cracking under the unbearable strain. "It seems I won't need to act." Guyena's voice was low as she watched his twisted form, the silver dragon spear turning slowly in her hand. She felt the Golden Dragon King's origin thrashing against the human shell, like the precursor to that self-detonation in the God realm. Long Yue, the light and dark Douluo, had once self-detonated her spirit avatar. Now, the light and dark twin dragons twisted into burning meteorites and lunged at Guyena, only to be shredded into bloody fireworks by Hai Wu Liang's spinning halberds. The old man's head rolled to Tang Wu Lin's feet. His cloudy eyes reflected the youth's dragon-like face. "No, Wu Lin," Wu Siduo cried, spreading her arms to shield him. Tang Wu Lin suddenly looked up. Vertical pupils, no human emotion, only the ferocity of a predator. Before the girl's plea finished, a dragon claw burst forth and impaled her through the chest. As expected, it's come to this. Guyuena sighed, raising the silver dragon spear. A 9-colored light surged from the tip. Tang Wu Lin, who had been ravening over Wu Siduo's body, froze as the Golden Dragon King's origin was forcibly drawn from his 7 orifices. The writhing golden energies condensed into tiny dragon shapes, shrieking in unwillingness. The destiny of the Silver Dragon King and the Golden Dragon King converged in that instant. The battlefield fell into an eerie hush. Golden light flickered from Guyena's silver hair, and delicate dragon-scale patterns appeared along her slender neck. A golden-red pillar of light shot into the sky. Huo Wuji's fingers tightened on his long saber. The pressure of an approaching dragon god manifestation pressed down. Roar! Tang Wu Lin's body burst into a mist of blood. With the Golden Dragon King's origin gone, his body began to collapse. Before it could disintegrate completely, Hai Wu Liang's twin halberds hurled and pinned him to the ground. Gu Yue. In the final flicker of life, a sliver of clarity returned to Tang Wu Lin's eyes. The broken golden dragon spear glowed faintly. The crooked yo carved on its handle, misshapen by a 12-year-old's fingernail long ago in the work-study dorm, was stained with fresh blood. Guyena's fingertips trembled as the spear hovered 3 inches from his throat. She saw his lips move, mouthing 3 words. "I'm sorry." There was no hesitation left. The silver dragon spear, driven by cold hatred, plunged into his throat bone and ended him instantly. As the Silver Dragon King and co-ruler of the Soul Beast Clan, Guyena's loathing for the Tang clan ran deep. To her, every tender memory had been a mockery of the God Realm's designs. The Tang clan, it would be better if they all died. When she withdrew the spear, a string of crimson beads trailed behind. Golden sigils wreathed across Guyuena's silver armor as the absorbed golden dragon essence inscribed ancient characters on her skin. Each glowing character triggered celestial disturbances. Thunderclouds gathered in the east, volcanoes erupted in the west, glaciers leapt across the north, and hurricanes screamed in the south. Not perfect enough, Hai Wuliang muttered, frowning. The Kunpeng phantom in his gilded hair stirred. He crossed his halberds before his chest. A fine crack split Guyuena's glabella. 9 colored dragon scales bloomed and withered like flowers. She was still one crucial step short of the true dragon god realm. Huo Wuji's saber sheath tapped the ground as he lifted his head to the twisted sky. Masters sighed. Before he could finish, the entire continent shuddered. The ground of the Shrek ruins split into thousand-jiang ravines as scorching core energy burst forth. Magma condensed into giant hands in midair. Their palm lines flowed with alchemy runes, clearly a chain reaction set off by Chen Zhou in the deeper planes. In the special dimension where the world core lay, the golden ancient tree, Yin's host, was disintegrating inch by inch. Emerald vines shot madly from cracks in the trunk, but they withered and carbonized the moment they touched the alchemy array. Tangsan's mother? Chen Zhou asked aloud as he stepped on the alchemy patterns, each stride leaving a cyan trail across the void. Xuanli floated obediently behind, her fingers playing with a small model of a planar star. The blue-haired woman trapped within the tree core opened her eyes. Countless vines reflected in her emerald pupils, thrusting outward like a spiked storm toward the intruder. Chapter 306. I Want to Be Big Brother's Most Perfect Disciple. The binding vines froze a foot short of Chen Zhou, then began to disintegrate inch by inch as if eaten away by some invisible force. Yin screamed, but the trunk of the golden tree itself seemed to reverse, shrinking, unweaving. You're turning the world core back into an embryo, she spat. Her parasitic body, which had clung to the core for thousands of years, was shedding its woody texture and reverting into a throbbing crystal heart. Countless golden filaments of condensed faith power were violently pulled from her 7 orifices. This belonged to Xuanli in the first place, Yin howled. Chen Zhou stood with his back to that web of tearing golden threads, his alchemist's robe snapping in the swirling energy. When half of Yin's form was ripped from the tree's core, she bit her tongue hard and spat a spray of deep blue blood mist. Her shrill roar echoed from deep within the world core, trapped inside the cage wrought by Chen Zhou's alchemy. She had been a parasite for 20,000 years, long since fused with the core's pulse, and now she was being stripped away with brutal precision. The emerald vines withered, the once white tree core glowed faintly with gold. The will of the golden tree, an ancient force that ought to have decayed with time, was being reawakened under the authority of Xuanli. You blasphemers! Yin screamed. Little San will not let you off. Her beautiful face twisted with pain as chains of law bound her like nails in the void, but Chen Zhou never spared her a look. His eyes were fixed on the crystal core gestating within the golden tree, feeling the vast, dormant law will within it. That origin should have belonged to Xuanli, and at last it was returning to its rightful owner. Heaven and earth refinement. At the words, the vast alchemical patterns contracted layer by layer. The golden tree collapsed like clay pressed by an unseen hand, condensing into a brilliant crystal no larger than a human head. Xuanli blinked, giggled, and extended her small hand. Big brother. Chen Zhou's expression softened. He gently placed the crystal into her palm. This is its original form. The moment the crystal merged with her, Xuanli's body erupted in billions of pinprick lights. The special dimension that housed the world core seemed to align with her. The stars in her eyes stopped rising and falling and began to turn in endless circles. She had always been a star god, but now she was truly whole. Yet she did not refine the crystal into power. Instead, she reshaped it into a sapling and tossed it back into the place where the world core had been. What are you doing? Chen Zhou asked. Xuanli hugged his neck like a child, her hair releasing a fresh woodland scent. I want to be Big Brother's most perfect disciple. I don't want to be some plain lord. Chen Zhou smiled knowingly. Very well. Since Xuanli refused the plain lord path, Chen Zhou, her master, acquiesced. He would use alchemy to fashion the sapling into a planetary energy converter suited to her intentions. Heaven and earth refinement. A reddish gold light flared from Chen Zhou's fingertips, and the space around them seemed to harden like amber. Wisdom older than the stars flowed through the alchemist's sight, the crystallized truths of countless planes. A yin's shattered spirit body was lifted into midair, stripped down to its most basic energy particles in a pale blue glow, with the spirit of plants as the foundation. Chen Zhou's left hand made a grasping motion. Yin screamed, a sound that was barely human, as her soul was ground away by the array, laws extracted to their essence, with ancient vestiges as the guide. His right hand called upon the golden tree's remnants. The scattered points of golden light reformed into profound runes. Xuan Li poked a floating cluster of green light the way a child pokes a puddle. Her fingertip touched it, and the sapling leapt 3 feet taller. Within the drifting light silk on its branches, scenes of the spirit beast great forest flickered, ancient memories dormant in Yin's bloodline. A perfect catalyst. Chen Zhou brought his fingers down like a blade. The green cluster split. The larger half became an emerald liquid that he injected into the sapling. The smaller condensed into a jade-green crystal and dropped into Xuan Li's palm. A little toy for you. The sapling drank the liquid, and its roots plunged into the void. Each root hair extended microscopic spatial passages, greedily drawing energy from the surrounding planes. Silver, vine-like patterns crawled up its trunk, manifestations of laws reconstructed by Chen Zhou's alchemy. Chen Zhou glanced toward the dimensional rift. Through the World Core's perception network, he saw Gu Yuena struggling to integrate the last of the Golden Dragon King bloodline. The image of the silver dragon spear driven into Tang Wulin's heart flashed through his mind, and something unreadable passed across his face. Big brother? Xuan Li leaned close, her hair brushing his cheek. Big sister smells bad. Chen Zhou chuckled and produced a silver-white metal chunk etched in runes, a medium refined from the remains of the Ice and Fire Dragon Kings. It was humming. Gu Yuena's Dragon God evolution had reached a critical point. If she smells bad, help her purify it. He tossed the metal into the sapling's branches. They closed around it, swallowing and digesting the strange alloy. In a few breaths, 7 dazzling silver blossoms unfurled at the crown, each petal reflecting a different Dragon Clan totem. Chen Zhou opened a spatial rift and reappeared above the ruins of Shrek Academy. Gu Yuena writhed under the Golden Dragon King bloodline's surge. Dissatisfaction flickered briefly across Chen Zhou's indifferent face. She was still too crude. Direct absorption was the way of beasts. Bloodlines, for an alchemist, could be handled more precisely and gently. He resolved to give Gu Yuena a corrective lesson in alchemical technique later. He raised his hand and guided the World Core's left-behind matrix. Branches and vines extended from the sapling, binding Gu Yuena like living sutures. Alchemical runes scrolled along their surface, acting like surgical blades cutting into the rampaging bloodline. Gu Yuena arched her back. Golden-red dragon scales among her silver hair flaked away. Each fallen scale released viscous threads of energy that condensed into miniature dragon shadows in the void. Hold still. Chen Zhou pointed to the spot between her brows. A pale blue light burst from his fingertips, tracing a 3-dimensional alchemy array across her skin. The 2 conflicting Dragon King origins were forced to circulate along the pattern, gradually harmonizing into a yin-yang balance. The suspended dragon shadows let out a synchronized keening and dissolved into interwoven golden-red smoke. Huo Wuji swung his saber at a rent in the fabric of space. "There's still a rat," he said. From the tear cut by the blade of judgment, a black-robed figure tumbled out. When the hood slipped back, it revealed a face still handsome, but exceptionally weary. Chapter 307, Report the Holy Spirit Cult's Demon Empress? Chen Zhou looked at the newcomer without changing his expression. He had already studied the golden ancient tree's memories. This woman could not fool him. The million-year deep-sea demon whale king was a level 100 true god without a condensed god position. Like Gu Yuena, she carried a deep hatred for the Tang clan. Was she an ally who had arrived late? Chen Zhou ignored the question and returned his attention to Gu Yuena's bloodline fusion. An alchemist enjoyed tinkering with his tools. Surrender and await judgment, or I will cut you down. Huo Wuji's phoenix eyes were like blades as he stared at the demon empress. The pure white crescent blade at his side gave off a cold light, ready at any moment to sever her head. Under the aura of the judgment blade, the demon empress's robes shredded into black butterflies, revealing pale skin patterned with demon whale markings. She was a level 100 true god, but invisible pressure forced her to her knees. Pale blue blood beaded along her sea algae blue hair. She began. I am not your enemy, she finished, hastily circulating spirit power to weave garments and cover herself. Watching the corpses of her enemies, the father and son, had filled her with a grim satisfaction. With so much of her revenge complete, she could no longer remain consumed by madness. Who would choose death if life was still possible? Besides, she still had a daughter in this world. Huo Wuji ignored her and stood with his blade sheathed, eyes closed in meditation. The world tree sapling suddenly spilled a waterfall of light. Pure life energy poured into Guyuena's crown. The bulging dragon scale veins on her neck gradually relaxed. When the final golden red scale embedded itself near her heart, a giant dragon phantom materialized in the sky above Douluo Star. Silver white on the left, dazzling gold on the right, with chaotic nine-colored patterns where they met. Much weaker than the dragon race war king, Huo Wuji scoffed, shrugging the ice crystals off his blade sheath. As a legendary machine beast warrior who had once faced the beast race war king himself, he could tell the vital god position condensation was still missing. Guyuena had not yet reached the dragon god she claimed. Chen Zhou suddenly placed his hand on Guyuena's back. The alchemical array in his palm resonated with the yin-yang fish array inside her, weaving a three-dimensional energy network. The silver-haired dragon girl opened her eyes. For an instant, her split heterochromatic pupils unified into nine-colored vertical slits, then they flipped back to the dazzling purple eyes of her human form. Thank you, she breathed, clutching Chen Zhou's wrist. Her fingers trembled. Scale-like alchemical patterns crawled across her snow-white neck, the flowing traces alive as they moved through her meridians. Chen Zhou withdrew his hand and said with dry scorn, How foolish! You've forgotten all the alchemy I taught you these last few days. Guyuena froze, then flushed as memory returned in part. Every lesson had ended the same way, passionate battles that left rational thought overwhelmed by more primal satisfactions. Of course she would forget the finer points. Come to my room tonight, Chen Zhou added with a mock-serious look. I'll give you a proper tutoring session. Guyuena's ear tips went crimson. Her dragon pupils narrowed into thin slits as emotion flickered across her face. She was about to answer when a great will swept through the ruins, the world tree's resonance. The sapling's phantom spread its branches under everyone's feet, and tender green veins of light crawled along the cracked ground to the horizon. Looks like Xuanli is having fun, Chen Zhou observed, glancing southwest. A verdant light pillar rose on the skyline as the world tree's root system combed through the continent's spirit veins. Countless points of green light rose from the soil like a reverse meteor shower, surging upward. The land Tang Hao had scarred was knitting itself back together. Huo Wuji. Chen Zhou's voice was calm and authoritative. Your subordinate is here, Huo Wuji answered. Arrest all remaining members of Shrek Academy and lock them in the East Sea dungeon to await judgment, Chen Zhou ordered, and inform Huo Tianshu to exterminate every reclusive family that refuses to surrender. Leave no one alive. Understood, Huo Wuji replied. As the world tree's roots reconnected with the continent, Douluo Star began an intense self-restoration. Life energy dispersed the dark clouds. Green shoots broke through scorched soil and swayed in the wind where battle had once left only ash. Later, at the Jisho Chamber of Commerce headquarters in East Sea City, Chen Zhou signed some important documents, then leaned back and closed his eyes. Though the four spiritual runes of wind, fire, earth, and water were fully inscribed in his spirit world and it continued to expand, his damaged soul still healed slowly. His earlier feats had been a temporary suppression of soul injury, enabling brief displays of alchemy. Fatigue washed over him in waves. My lord, came two measured voices at his door. Chen Zhou opened his eyes. Enter. Hu Shatian and the Golden Claw God stepped in, both in human form. My lord, the Golden Claw God reported in a deep, detached voice, the Heavendu continent is under control. The East Sea Legion's 3rd, 4th, and 5th divisions have pacified it. The Douling royal family, resisting sects, and all opposing armies have been completely annihilated. Chen Zhou was not surprised. The Armor Beast tribe had lost their war king's fighting power. Survival required ruthless leadership. If Golden Claw God, as their leader, had not been merciless, the Armor Beast tribe would not have endured the brutal Machine Beast world. To the Machine Beast warriors, death was simply raw material for growth. Once the rule that killing enemies produced strength reasserted itself, bloodlust became a currency of survival. Hu Shatian's magnetic voice followed. The Star Luo continent is the same. With Dai Tianling's assistance, resistance was minimal. The East Sea 1st, 2nd, and 6th divisions now control it. He paused, then added, Emperor Dai Tianling took his own life, and Dai Yuan died in battle. I took the liberty of preserving the Dai clan royal bloodline. They will be bound to serve your lord's household for generations as a slave race, until their last breath. Hu Shatian knelt on one knee, his crimson cloak pooling on the floor like spilled blood. Even in human flesh, he towered over 2 meters tall, his long golden hair flowing. Taking liberties, your subordinate pleads guilty, he said solemnly, head bowed. Chapter 3:8. Biji Hu Shatian bowed his head, murmuring apologies to Chen Zhou. Even beneath the white robe, his muscles bulged like coiled ropes, as if they might burst free of skin at any moment. Chen Zhou tapped his fingertips on the armrest. Where his skin touched, the wood's grain shimmered with a metallic sheen. Alchemists did that when they thought. Objects they touched unconsciously refined themselves into better forms. You certainly know how to act on your own initiative. His gaze cut across Golden Claw God, still standing at attention, and settled back on Hu Shatian. Agreed, your punishment is to mark the Dai clan as slaves. Go find Huo Tianshu for the mental imprint, Chen Zhou added. Hu Shatian's tiger-like canines flashed in the shadow. When he realized Chen Zhou bore him no grudge, a smile spread across his face. Your subordinate will leave at once. After the cadence of 2 sets of boots faded down the corridor, another knock sounded at the door. Come in. Chen Zhou rubbed his temples. There seemed to be no end to these post-battle complications. He felt a twinge of annoyance, then remembered Huo Wuji upstairs, hunched over piles of paperwork, and suddenly the bother didn't seem so bad. Master, a voice said. Sunlight slanted through the stained glass as she entered. Her gilded heels clicked on bluestone like a kingfisher nipping at dew. Her jade bones and pale skin, refined by 100,000 years of cultivation, were set off by a tailored secretary suit the color of snow clouds. The pencil skirt hugged her waist like a swan's neck. Each step sent ripples across the fabric, the faint reflection of her emerald wings in the human world. A wisp of green hair, cool as morning mist, brushed Chen Zhou's hand as he hovered pen over the official document. BG leaned in, her simple spectacles sliding down her nose. The malachite pendant on their chain swung like a small pendulum, fracturing the room's light into pale cyan ripples. Master, she breathed. She lowered herself onto his lap with the practiced ease of a swan touching water. Her skirt betrayed the thought in the curve of her knees, pressed together beneath thin fabric like an opening lotus petal. One of Chen Zhou's teacups spilled when her earrings swayed, jade feathers carved into delicate earrings making the faintest rustle. Master, do we really have to report like this? She whispered. Her voice was swallowed by the close press of their bodies. The pen in her hand seemed to bloom. The emerald cap matched the color of her hair and threw a flickering green shadow across her white throat. The spirit power left from her 100,000-year spirit beast transformation made her cheeks glow with a rosy warmth, 3 degrees clearer than a human's, and all the more innocent for it. Outside, real swans drifted through the clouds, the mist on her glasses tinting the blue sky beyond into a hazy emerald. Chen Zhou felt some of his long-accumulated fatigue ease. He put his left arm around her waist and took the optical terminal she offered with his right. A holographic projection unfolded, translucent maps of resource distribution across continents. As he stroked along the map, electric arcs from his fingertips burned away a few sensitive data points, potion formulas that required an alchemist's personal touch. The hundreds of ore veins controlled by the Sun-Moon Federation, he murmured. BG rested her cheek against his shoulder. The scent of grass and wood came from her hair. And Star Luo continent and Heaven Do continent, the metal ore deposits on both are all here. She bit her lower lip as Chen Zhou's hand traced a visible spirit bone pattern at the small of her back, the origin point of the Emerald Swan. The spot was so sensitive that BG went limp and sagged against his chest like a length of silk. Chen Zhou, however, had already found what he needed in the document. Before Dai Tianling's suicide, the last Star Luo Emperor had secretly transferred the Imperial family's strategic reserve, 3 tons of heavy silver core crystals, buried 30 meters beneath Star Luo City inside an alchemical matrix, enough to outfit 3 full Spirit Master legions. Good at hiding things, Chen Zhou said. His fingers drew alchemy runes along BG's waist. Green light slid down the slit of her kyongsam and turned into tiny rune messengers when they hit the floor. Miniatures that would hop and drill into cracks to carry their master's will. Golden Claw God would soon be serving a new search warrant. It would be better to clear the world of these problems in one sweep, rather than patching over them endlessly. A communicator broke the moment, its tone slicing through their intimacy. BG tried to rise, but Chen Zhou held her gently but firmly to his lap. The holographic screen distorted, and the Demon Empress appeared. The deep-sea demon whale was trapped in a cage of world tree roots, faint blue arcs of electricity coiling around her body. Master. Her voice came hoarse through the transmission. I know the coordinates of the sea god's inheritance ground. Chen Zhou tightened his hold on Baiji. She hummed softly against him. The Demon Empress's face in the projection flickered with surprise. She probably hadn't expected to see such a human moment from the cold-blooded alchemist. Atoning for your sins? Chen Zhou said dryly. He used the tail of his pen to lift BG's chin, studying her as if she were a work of art rather than a prisoner. Tang San's God-position trials remaining in the human world do hold value, but he jabbed the pen at the hologram, aiming for the Demon Empress's glabella. Even through the virtual barrier, she flinched as if shocked. The pen carried a temporary mental link Chen Zhou had established by alchemical means. I'm not interested. His voice turned cold. I want to know what else you can bring me besides that. In this plane, so-called divinities are powerful humans who use the God realm's eternal substances to extend their lives. Divinity and its laws require a God position to be acquired, cultivated, and controlled. Chen Zhou had no use for a smoky inheritance that required a God position to make it meaningful. The Demon Empress's face contorted. A narrow, bloody fissure opened on her forehead, and blue-golden blood dripped onto the world tree roots, which responded by growing sharp, wild thorns. Pain made her curl in on herself, but her eyes burned with ferocity as she stared at Chen Zhou. The deep-sea demon whale clan. We are willing to control the ocean for you. We will control everything in the ocean for you. Chen Zhou listened without flinching. After Tang San became a god, he spent the 100 years he could remain in the human world searching for divinity inheritance sites. Most of them were submerged in the sea. That's why, after him, almost no one has been able to find the god position's inheritance grounds. He let that hang in the air as the Demon Empress's plea echoed in the cramped room, the holographic image flickering with every tremor from the world tree's lethal roots. Chapter 309, Yuanqin Family, Demon Plane. Baiji's lashes trembled at the Demon Emperor's mournful scream. She shrank into Chen Zhou's arms as the emerald specks falling from her hair condensed on the carpet into a peacock feather pattern. Chen Zhou suddenly let go of her and placed a long, slender hand on the center of the alchemy array engraved on the desk. Instantly, every metal component in the room lit with green sigils, and an energy fluctuation far beyond ordinary spirit power made the projection of the Demon Emperor flicker violently. I will have someone bring you, prove your worth, and then you and your daughter can live, Chen Zhou said. His voice was deeper than the ocean, suffocating and absolute. Sunlight from the window edged him in cold silver, and in the depths of his pupils, a gear-shaped golden wheel spun into being, a manifestation of a law older and grander than even a god position. After passing instructions to Hu Shatian, Chen Zhou cut the connection. His fountain pen rolled 3 times between his fingers before snapping back into BG's breast pocket, and he buried his face in her soft emerald hair. "Master," BG murmured. The tips of the emerald swan's ears were flushed, and the emerald disc buttons on her qipao began to glow faintly. The latent spirit power in her accessories sensed his mood and condensed into tiny motes of light that drifted toward Chen Zhou's lips. She suddenly pressed down on his hand as he reached for the back of her neck, the morning mist of the Star-Doe Great Forest shimmering in her moist eyes. Now is work time," she whispered, but her voice faltered when the pen rolled off the desk with a crisp click. Chen Zhou cupped her heated cheeks, his thumb finding the tear mole that seemed poised to fall, the most sensitive spiritual node of 100,000-year spirit beast. BG went immediately limp, a boneless swan, hanging softly in his arms as the feathered garment's spirit bone along her spine lit with emerald tracery. The distant roar of a motorcycle and the elevated morning train of East Sea City threaded through the gaps between buildings. Sunlight poured through the window and patterned the room in moving stripes. As the light slid across BG's skin, it seemed as if countless emerald feathers were unfurling and folding with the shifting beams. Guyana, the silver-haired dragon queen, entered then and stopped in the doorway, framed by the rectangular patch of light. Her purple, crystal-clear eyes narrowed. She recognized the feather-like soul imprint on BG's back, an imprint that only revealed itself on an emerald swan during extreme emotional upheaval. Light blue alchemy runes danced above Chen Zhou's raised left palm. The geometric shapes were weaving BG's materialized spirit power into a coherent data stream. When Guyuana's aura registered, the runes contracted into a pigeon blood ruby that clicked softly as it landed against the hollow at BG's collarbone. "The dragon god bloodline is stabilized?" Chen Zhou asked, his voice neutral as if the intimacy a moment ago had been a mirage. He hooked a shoe over an armchair to gesture Guyuana in, but she didn't sit. Her gaze lingered on BG's flushed cheeks and the faint smear of lipstick at Chen Zhou's collar. BG hastily straightened, her face burning. She picked the ruby from her collarbone and cradled it in her palm, eyes like liquid light. "My lord," she whispered. Guyuana made no reply. Her slender, ivory fingers dug into the edge of the desk, hard enough to leave faint impressions in the wood. She looked as though she was forcing herself to suppress some inward tempest. At last, she said in a clipped voice, "The bloodline's stable. It's just some aspects of knowledge haven't been fully absorbed yet." "Then we'll continue tonight," Chen Zhou said. "Anything else?" she asked. Guyuana inhaled and put on a composed expression. "The patriarch of the Yuanchen family requests an audience." "Yuanchen?" Chen Zhou thought for a moment, recalling glimpses from the world's memories. A love-struck Yuanchen kin who'd brought home a woman tied to the demon plane and, on an ordinary night, opened a portal to the demon plane, summoning marauding demons that slaughtered nearly half his family. He seemed to remember also having a prisoner named Yuanchen. "Let him in." Chen Zhou lightly patted BG's pert backside as an unspoken signal to tidy the papers. The emerald swan's ears flushed even redder. She scrambled to collect the scattered documents and slipped back toward the bookshelf, barefoot on the carpet, the forgotten crystal heels abandoned like fallen emerald feathers. Guyuana watched with a faint, odd expression and a slight shake of her head, as if amused by how thoroughly BG had been trained. Chen Zhou turned his gaze to Guyuana. She wore a secretary's suit that hugged her figure. Silver-threaded lapels traced the curve of her waist, and the collar of her pristine white shirt was slightly open, revealing a sliver of porcelain skin beneath the cascade of her silver hair. Leaning against the sandalwood desk, her purple eyes fixed on him with a playful reproach that shimmered with countless, unspoken thoughts. "Seems Master's work life is quite fulfilling," she teased, voice cool as spring water on jade. "Today it's BG. Tomorrow, who will it be? How about your turn?" Chen Zhou offered, half smiling. Guyuana felt something like panic flutter through her chest. He had remained unmoved even when she had pleaded with him in her father's name. She let out a breath that could have been a laugh or a surrender and left the office, cheeks flushed. When the carved wooden door opened again, 2 men entered. The elder in front moved with steady, measured steps. His white hair and long robe lent him an austere dignity. Behind him followed a middle-aged man who tried to keep his face composed despite a mournful undercurrent. Yuan Chentian and his son pay respects to Lord Chen Zhou, the elder announced, bowing deeply. Yuan Chen Tiandang followed suit. Silence settled like a held breath, broken only by the distant birdsong outside the window. Chen Zhou's fingertips tapped lightly on the armrest, cold metal against skin, while his eyes, unreadable, seemed to pass through the two men and rest beyond the still open door. Chapter 310, Yuan and Tiandang's request, Rise. Those two faint words cut through the air colder than the winds across the ice plains. Yuan and Gentian slowly straightened, head bowed, eyes refusing to meet Chen Zhou's. I have come to apologize to your excellency for my son's actions. The middle-aged man, Yuan and Tiandang, suddenly dropped to his knees and slammed his forehead to the floor. Tiandang humbly begs your excellency to spare my daughter. The dull crack of his forehead hitting the carpet had not yet faded before the staccato of Chen Zhou's finger-tapping went still. Your daughter? Chen Zhou leaned forward. The desk erupted in a filigree of alchemical patterns. The flickering lines sliced the shadows of the two Yuanin men into scattered fragments, like the fractured futures that awaited them. He eyed the faint emblem on the back of Yuanin Tiandang's neck, a mark of plain erosion. Yuanin Yehui, is it? That half-blood demon realm girl should be in East Sea City prison right now, Chen Zhou said quietly. So why was she allowed to stay at Shrek Academy? Were you not afraid I would make a move on her, or that your presence would make me hesitate? He added. Yuan and Gentian lowered his head still further and answered respectfully. Your excellency is wise. It was not that we deliberately sheltered her. Yehui is headstrong. She believed Shrek could protect her, so she insisted on staying. The old man's voice rasped. Besides, Shrek offered at the time that they would let a divine force help suppress the demon realm bloodline within her. Chen Zhou cut him off with a cold sneer. You really believed those hypocrites would keep their promise? If the divine force belonged to Yun Ming, Chen Zhou might have understood, but it belonged to Tang Hao, wounded and weakened. Would he willingly use that fractured divine power to help you? The office seemed to thicken. Sunlight through the window, refracted by the alchemical lattice, carved grooves of light and shadow across Yuan and Gentian's face. The old man's calloused knuckles rubbed the hidden pattern on his cuff. The Tai Tan totem the original Grace family had passed down for 1,000 years. As Chen Zhou laughed, a thin cloud drifted across the sun outside. The daylight dimmed to a pale gray, and the alchemical lines on the desk bled into a dark, blood-like red. The neat geometric patterns contracted like a tightening web, pressing half an inch into the agarwood. Yuan and Gentian's Titan giant ape spirit bulged beneath his skin. The old man who had once torn a titled Douluo apart with one hand now felt his knees weaken under invisible pressure. His son trembled, supporting himself with shaking hands to avoid collapsing. Glass cups on the tea table powdered and shattered one by one. So what exactly do you want from me? Chen Zhou asked. To return your daughter to you? And then let her live peacefully until she becomes a titled Douluo and opens the demon realm. The black of Chen Zhou's eyes seemed to flare. Far within, golden wheels of fire spun like furnaces. A wisp of smoke rose from Yuan and Gentian's cuff, an instinctive reaction of the Titan totem to intense heat. No, no, no. The old man patted at his cuff in panic. The scorched part of the hidden pattern wept tiny beads of blood. Fear contorted his aged face into a grimace. We only hope that your excellency will give her a chance to reform. Chen Zhou raised a hand. The alchemical lattice snapped into countless golden threads that coiled around Yuan and Tiandang's body. The tightness made the man's veins stand out. He clenched his teeth and didn't cry out. The golden filaments crawled and gathered at the demon realm emblem on his nape with a sizzling sound like hot metal on skin. Reform? Chen Zhou chuckled. A little girl whose very existence is meant to open a channel for the demon realm. I am not so cruel as to brand her with sin forever. But she is a mistake, he continued, and you had precedent, yet you still let her remain. What, then, do you expect me to do? Chen Zhou's fingers tapped the armrest as his gaze slid to the window. A maglev train threaded past the gap between buildings. Reflected glass light cast shifting speckles across his profile. Those fragments fell onto the desk and matched the trajectory of the alchemical array, forming an ancient ceiling design. Master. BG's voice was as soft as a feather. She had finished organizing the papers and held a jade-glazed cup from which amber tea steamed, scented faintly with the aura of the Stardow Great Forest. As she set the cup beside Chen Zhou, her fingertips trembled at the sight of the still-moving alchemical runes, reminders of unpleasant memories. Guyuena had returned while they were speaking. She stood by the door, a crescent hair ornament glinting in her silver hair, idly turning a purple crystal chess piece. Her eyes lingered on the mark at Yuanen Tiandang's nape. "I can give you two choices," Chen Zhou said at last. His voice dropped and the room's temperature plunged. Frost gathered on the window, and the patterns of ice crystals matched the jade light drops BG had spilled earlier. "First, she stays in the laboratory. She will be a living sample of the Demon Realm bloodline and must cooperate with my research." He lifted BG's cup and took a sip. Indigo smoke braided up from the tea and vanished. "Of course, you need to understand what that means. She may survive, but she will not necessarily remain human." Yuanen Gentian made a sound like an animal trapped in a snare. The spectral Titan giant ape flared across his body, but the spirit, capable of shaking mountains, was shredded into motes by the omnipresent alchemical patterns as soon as it manifested. The golden threads gnawed at the dissipating spirit like a swarm of piranha. And the second, Yuanen Tiandang looked up suddenly. Despite the blood and bruises on his skin from the constricting threads, a spark of hope flared in his eyes. Chen Zhou glanced at him, then snapped his fingers. The office walls rippled like water, revealing a translucent light screen. Inside, a white, sterile cell appeared. A black-haired girl curled in a corner, the twisting horns of the demon realm bound by special shackles, her pale skin marked with sealing incantations. "Yehui!" Yuanen Tiandang tried to lunge toward the screen, but the alchemical runes yanked him back to his knees, his joints cracked like a spiderweb under strain. Chen Zhou traced the rim of the teacup, and the cup's glaze mirrored the imprisoned girl. "Second," he said, "I can strip her of her demon realm bloodline." He let the words hang. The process, he warned, would be excruciating, and the success rate was— He glanced at BG. She silently raised 3 fingers. 30%, she said. "Failure will result in severe mental impairment or outright brain death." The amethyst chess piece in Guyuena's hand shattered without warning. She frowned as crystalline dust sifted through her fingers, an expression that seemed to dredge up an unpleasant memory. The Silver Dragon King's sudden agitation caught Chen Zhou's eye. He gave her a deliberately measured look. Yuanen Gentian's old face twitched like dried orange peel. He grabbed his son by the collar and hissed something into his ear. The elderly Titan's knuckles went white with the grip, but Yuanen Tiandang only shook his head numbly, tears gathering and darkening the carpet beneath him. Inside the light-screened enclosure, Yuanen Yehui suddenly looked up into the void as if sensing something. Her pupils, one blood red and the other pitch black, flickered violently in a rare, heterochromatic display. She opened her mouth and let out a silent scream. Every light in the cell exploded outward, the fragments solidifying and suspending midair as if frozen by an invisible hand. Interesting. Chen Zhou raised an eyebrow. To trigger a demon realm resonance through spatial confinement, have they detected the suppression I placed? When Chen Zhou had interrogated the prisoners of war, he had noticed the unusual Yuanen Yehui and, taking the opportunity, bound her with a bloodline-suppressing array. He hadn't expected the demon realm to be so eager as to punch through his suppression and announce itself, nor to let this little girl open a channel. "All right, it's time to make your choice." He spoke to the gathered family. "If I have to act, your original Grace family will be marked and required to serve me for generations." There was no free aid in Chen Zhou's world. He had no patience for charity. The original Grace family had practical value. As a Titan line, they carried the blood of a spirit beast, the Titan giant ape he had killed for the ritual. That made them useful for research, and their relatively robust constitutions made them better candidates for Huo Tianshu's human trials. The ceiling for spirit masters on the Douluo plane was still far too low. Chen Zhou could not let the world stagnate. He wanted to accelerate its development. The office dropped into a heavy silence, broken only by the metallic clink of Yuanen Yehui's shackles as she struggled within the light screen. The runes on the pitch-black chains resonated with the peacock plume motif woven into the carpet, and the feather pattern at the base of BG's neck glowed several shades brighter. Chen Zhou noticed BG's knuckles whitening around a teacup saucer. He reached out and brushed her back. The stress-induced spirit bone light that had flared along her spine dimmed immediately, obedient. You need time to think. He tapped his fingertips together, and the light screen collapsed into a blood-colored crystal in his palm. He tossed it to Yuan and Gentian. As the old man caught it, the pained, twisted image of his granddaughter's face bloomed across the crystal surface. "Give me an answer in 3 days." Chen Zhou waved them out. "Now, leave." At the command, every emerald mote on the carpet ignited. Pale Qingguang flames coiled around their ankles like living snakes and literally propelled them toward the door. The heavy, carved wood slammed shut behind them. The last thin wedge of sunlight seeping through was singed to black. BG was about to speak, but a thunderclap rolled across the sky and swallowed her words. A sudden downpour began, huge drops battering the window and leaving marks like demon fangs. Guyuana moved to the glass, her silver hair flashing in the lightning. "The demon realm is restless," she said. Her fingertips traced the window frame, and the falling rain froze mid-streak, turning into thorn-like ice crystals. "Did you deliberately stimulate the bloodline in that girl?" Chen Zhou didn't answer. He was holding BG's wrist, inspecting something. The leg exposed by the slit of the emerald swan Changsam was pale and smooth as white jade, one of those things he never tired of at night. He drew her closer and, unbothered by Guyuana's presence, began to run his hands through BG's long hair and along her soft waist. BG, flushed, buried her face against his chest. Her earlobes were the color of blood. The storm intensified. The lightning outlined the three of them on the wall like figures in an ancient mural. "Are you going to use Yuan and Yehui as bait?" Guyuana demanded, voice sharp, "and lure an unknown, dangerous plane down on us?" Chen Zhou finally looked up. The alchemical matrix in his pupils rotated like miniature stars. "Not unknown, little silver dragon king." He sounded patient, speaking to her the way he would to someone he kept at once as secretary and lover. "I'm an alchemist, yes, but more a scholar at heart. A scholar must know a little of everything." He let his words land slowly. "The demon realm at best is at the level your old soul beast clan once was. Its king is no stronger than you were before you absorbed the essences of the ice and fire dragon kings." Rain hissed against the glass in a staccato of tiny demons clawing at the panes. The air pressure seemed to dip. Mist from the emerald teacup curled into strange shapes and threw shifting colors across the room. Guyuana's purple eyes narrowed. Her slender fingers toyed with the remaining fragments of the chess piece, and memories of lab work flitted across her face. The alchemy sigils in plastered walls, the endless days of bloodline analysis. Chen Zhou had spoken of her inheritance like a specimen to be dissected. "If you open a channel to the demon realm," she began, voice tight. Her words cut off as she saw Chen Zhou's fingers trailing runes across BG's exposed neck. Pale Qingguang symbols spiraled down the emerald swan's spine and linked into a shimmering chain. Bai Ji lay curled in his arms, lashes lowered, as if she had long since grown used to that touch. The chess piece in Guyuana's hand cracked and fell to the floor with a brittle clatter. Only then did she realize she'd crushed it, sharp shards pressed against her palm. No blood, but the involuntary force of her grip betrayed the turmoil under her calm. Chen Zhou laughed softly and let a strand of emerald light slip from BG's waist. "Are you jealous, Silver Dragon King, or are you afraid of those little pests from the demon realm?" Lightning split the sky and illuminated the gear-like wheels turning in the alchemist's eyes. "It appears you lean toward the latter." He snapped his fingers. The alchemical array flared, and a white light wrapped around the three of them. When it faded, they were in Chen Zhou's bedroom. The soft mattress pressed at Guyuana's back, and something in her moved with sudden comprehension. She glanced at BG, who was already curled up on the bed, burying her face in the covers. She realized, with the shock of it, this was going to be a threesome. Chapter 312, It's Not Work Time Anymore. Guyuana's silver hair fanned out across the silk sheets, her amethyst eyes swirling with equal parts shame and astonishment. She pushed up on her elbows, intending to rise, but Chen Zhou's fingers were already tracing the dragon scale patterns at her waist, the most sensitive energy node of the Silver Dragon King's bloodline. "You," she began, but BG interrupted with a clear, musical trill. The Emerald Swan, at some unknown moment, had been lifted into midair by alchemical runes. Her feathered spirit bone manifested around her, and the emerald-lit plumes shivered at Chen Zhou's touch. Under the Silver Dragon King's shocked gaze, BG's Cheongsam hem slid like a wave, revealing the pale, moon-white skin characteristic of the elves of the Stardew Great Forest. "It's not work time anymore." Chen Zhou's voice held the quiet warmth of alchemical flame. His left hand steadied the floating BG, while his right hand traced down Guyuena's spine toward the legendary Yuzhen acupoint, where the dragon god's power was said to converge. The silver-haired woman's struggles suddenly stilled, her back arched into a breathtaking curve, delicate silver scales appearing at the nape of her neck. Outside, the heavy rain turned to hail, thumb-sized pellets striking the glass like small cannon shots, but the storm only seemed to sharpen the rhythmic breathing of the three inside. "You clearly, humph." Guyuena's accusation was cut off when Chen Zhou pinched her chin lightly. He didn't resist the pull of nature. He was young and humanly pleased by beauty, but there was also a practiced calm in him. The silver dragon's coccyx felt warm under his palm, as if a tiny furnace burned beneath her skin. "Relax," he murmured. He nipped her earlobe. "You wouldn't want this to happen in front of BG, would you?" The thought of being seen like this by BG, a former subordinate, made Guyuena abandon further resistance. The rain on the glass faded into background noise. She watched BG suspended in the air, her feathered robe loosened by alchemical force and ornaments of emerald light clinking as they fell to the foot of the bed. What stunned Guyuena most was BG's expression. The normally sharp gaze of a 100,000-year spirit beast had smoothed into something soft and open. The slender spirit's fingers clutched the bed curtain like a bashful maiden. When Chen Zhou's runes probed the spirit bone groove along her lower back, BG let out a small, involuntary sound that made Guyuena flush. "What did you do to her?" Guyuena asked, even as her fingers curled and hooked around Chen Zhou's neck. Her eyes were misty but clear. If her consciousness had been weaker, she might have already surrendered to the sensation that threatened to overwhelm her. Chen Zhou took advantage of the pause, gently pressing Guyuena back into the pillow. Feathers and a faint dragon breath incense scent rose from the bed. His fingertips traced the crescent patterns on her chest, and wherever they passed, scales bloomed in pale iridescence. "Just testing a hidden function of spirit beasts when they adopt human form," he said casually. The scent of close proximity, warm and intimate, tinged the air. Her snow-white skin and silver hair blended into an alluring whole. He kissed her without ceremony. "Now," he whispered, "it's time I examine you properly." Lightning slashed across the low East Sea City sky as the storm showed no sign of relenting. Outside the Alchemy Association's headquarters, the old man Yuanen Gentian and his son, Yuanen Tiandong, stood in the rain, droplets soaking their clothes. The elder's hand was clenched around a small crystal that leaked a blood-red glow. Inside, Yuanen Yehui's pain was trapped like a branded memory. "Father," Yuanen Tiandong's voice was hoarse. "Are we really going to hand Yehui over to him?" Yuanen Gentian's face was even more grave in the downpour. "Do you think we have a choice?" He answered, thunder in his tone. "The demonic bloodline has already corroded her soul. If even Chen Zhou can't pull it out, she'll become a puppet of the demon realm, like the calamities before." Tiandong stood in silence for a long time, finally lowering his head as the rain ran down his face, mixing with tears. At the street's end, a dark electric carriage drew up. The curtains bore the Alchemy Association's emblem, a pattern of interlocking gears and stars. The curtain was lifted by a pale hand to reveal a man wearing a silver mask. "Please get in the car," he said, cool and efficient. "The master instructed us to ensure your safe return." Yuanen Gentian took a steadying breath and gripped his son's shoulder. "Let's go, Tiandong. 3 days from now, we'll be back." The carriage rolled into the rain and disappeared into the gray smear of the city. In a high-level chamber within the Alchemy Association, Chen Zhou sat by the window, watching the rain. On the large bed behind him, BG and Guyuana slept in a ragged, exhausted repose. The rumpled sheets and scattered clothing bore quiet testament to what had come before. Now the room had settled into a fragile, almost deathly stillness. Lightning lit the heavy curtains at intervals, throwing a silver edge across Chen Zhou's silhouette. His fingers still carried the memory of touching a tranquil forest. Tiny motes of emerald and silver stardust clung to his cuffs and slowly dissolved. Alchemical array patterns bled faint blue light across the floor, then rose to form a subtle, wavering barrier that wrapped the room. After ensuring the two were not likely to wake, the crimson gold wheel embedded in Chen Zhou's left eye quickened its spin. First the demon realm, then the abyss plane, he murmured. But those two alone won't supply the energy and materials needed to build a stable, transdimensional gate. The Douluo plane sat favorably in the surrounding starfield, but its cosmic ceiling was limited. To harvest enough energy and the right materials without damaging a planet's origin, Chen Zhou calculated he would need resources from at least 4 world planes like the Douluo plane. The demon realm and the abyss plane were rich in energy but poor in usable materials. It looks like the transdimensional gate needs to be put on the agenda, he concluded. Cross-planet travel in this starfield was possible, but painstakingly slow. A gate for direct teleportation would accomplish in a single step what cosmic travel could not. With that decided, Chen Zhou let the crimson gold glow in his eye fade and exhaled softly into the stormy night. Chapter 313. It was all for our Soul Beast Clan. A moment later, a pair of snow-white arms slipped around Chen Zhou's waist. BG had woken up somehow, her large, beautiful eyes glazed. Her pretty face peered out from his embrace. Rich emerald spirit power clung to her eyelashes, dripping onto the sheets in patterns like a peacock fanning its tail. "Master," she murmured, dazed and seductive as she burrowed against him. Her exquisite, snow-white skin still bore the warm flush of last night. Emerald hair coiled around Chen Zhou's wrist like chains forged from some mythical metal. When he looked down, he met her gaze, brimming with morning dew, the most unguarded expression of a 100,000-year spirit beast. "Master, BG can continue, oh," she whispered, and feather-light kisses landed on his chest, along with warm, moist breaths. Chen Zhou cupped the emerald swan's delicate chin. His thumb stroked her pearly lips. Obedient, she tilted her head back. From her shoulder blades, emerald feathers of condensed spirit power drifted down and formed on the sheets the pattern of the Star Doe Great Forest's ancient altar. "My greedy little swan," Chen Zhou whispered. The words made the tips of BG's ears glow crystalline emerald. In an instant, she was flipped over. Her iridescent feathered spirit bones spread like a fan along her spine, and spirit meridians flowed beneath her skin like a galaxy of light. An intimate soul display the Emerald Swan clan showed only in courtship. The sleeping Guyuana stretched an unconscious leg. Chen Zhou's left hand had already brushed through her cascading silver hair. The silver-haired girl whimpered in her dream like a young dragon, her legs twisting in the sheets. "Now it begins!" Outside the city, Huo Tianshu's actions had toppled many reclusive families across the Douluo continent. The original Grace family, once secluded, was among those uprooted. All the aloof forces had been cleared out and relocated to the outskirts of East Sea City, awaiting judgment. Dawn's faint light seeped through gaps in the heavy curtains, and the old grandfather clock struck 7. BG's eyelashes trembled as she tried to push herself up from Chen Zhou's arms. Her tattered cheongsam had long since dissolved into emerald motes on the floor. Now she was wrapped in the robe Chen Zhou had tossed over her. The lingering scent of stardust on the fabric made the feather patterns at her nape flare again. A knock sounded at the door. "My lord, the envoy from the reclusive families has arrived," came a hesitant report. BG scrambled to gather the scattered fastenings, but Chen Zhou pressed her wrist down. Under his sleeping robe, his chest showed dragon-scale scars and the faint glow of swan feather patterns. He casually summoned the alchemy matrix over the head of the bed. The rotating geometric shapes wove into new clothing and immediately covered BG. "Make them wait," he said, his voice like an ice-tempered blade. The man outside stumbled at the order and knocked over a vase. Chen Zhou leaned down and nibbled at BG's ear. The emerald swan gasped and curled into his embrace. The feathery light patterns that had bloomed along her spine the night before flickered again. Spirit bone traits only bared uncontrollably under extreme emotion. Guyena, still half asleep on the other side of the bed, turned over, silver hair fanning like a galaxy across the mattress. "Don't make noise. Let me sleep a bit longer." Guyena swatted at Chen Zhou's teasing hand, her tired eyes refusing to open. Who knows what it was last night? At that, Guyena raised her head, silver hair disheveled over snow-white shoulders, shame and indignation burning in her amethyst eyes. She reached instinctively for a pillow to hurl at him, but a sudden soreness in her waist made her groan. The dignified silver dragon king. Chen Zhou leaned in, thumb tracing lingering bite marks on her collarbone. Can't even manage a sneak attack. Before he finished, BG pressed against him from behind. Her emerald feather garment dissolved into a stream of light that wrapped his wrist. This docile swan was trying, absurdly, to help Guyena. Chen Zhou arched an eyebrow and turned. BG flinched and dropped her lashes but stubbornly tugged his hand away from Guyena. The red marks on her neck from the night before still showed faintly among her emerald hair, like plum petals fallen on snow. "Interesting," Chen Zhou chuckled, then moved to cup BG's waist and press her back down. Alchemy runes flared on the sheets and solidified the feathered garment into physical chains. As BG cried and struggled, the clinking of chains made Guyuena's ear tips flush. "You," the Silver Dragon King began, but Chen Zhou pinched her chin. A shadow suddenly passed over the morning light outside the window. A mechanical dragon beast had clamped its front claws on the balcony railing, its crimson electronic eyes fixed on the room through the glass. Chen Zhou's messenger, which only entered his chambers directly for urgent reports. He finally released them both. As he dressed, he shifted the chained bracelet back into clothing. "I'll go ahead." In an instant, Chen Zhou was perched atop the mechanical dragon's head. As the machine lifted, his figure vanished into the morning mist. Only BG and Guyuena remained, the charged, ambiguous atmosphere still thick between them. Guyuena chewed her silver teeth for a moment, then surrendered and lay back down. Her gaze fell on BG, who fumbled weakly to reform her emerald feather garment. Last night's excessive expenditure had left her spirit power like a broken kite. Only faint wisps of glow remained. "You," Guyena began, but swallowed the rest. BG looked up, their eyes met with a delicate spark. She spoke first, voice soft as if afraid to disturb what remained of the night. "My lord, last night." "Don't mention last night." Guyuena sat bolt upright, silver hair flying, a flash of panic in her purple eyes. "It was all for our Soul Beast clan." BG raised an eyebrow, as if seeing the Silver Dragon King's resolve once more. Her gentle brows curved into a smile, and she reached out to embrace Guyuena's slender form. "Go back to sleep, my lord," she murmured, soothingly. On the Alchemy Association's helipad, low clouds still hugged the morning, and the mechanical dragon's metal claws scraped 3 deep furrows into the granite. Chen Zhou leaped down from the dragon's head. Huo Wuji, who had been waiting, hurried over and handed him a stack of documents. "Here's the situation, my lord," he said. Chapter 314, Bowing as Slaves. Under the Demon Emperor's leadership, we found 13 seabed sites that once held assessments for different god positions. Since the god realm was swept away by the cosmic storm, those positions no longer hold fixed energy, Huo Wuji reported. But on the structures and altars at those assessment sites, we found varying amounts of the materials you asked us to look for, Master. Chen Zhou had already given Huo Wuji a general direction before the second battle, along with a list of materials needed to build Time City. What one seeks with diligence, one often finds. The deep-sea demon whale clan had been stripped down, and any useful components were to be salvaged. Facing a million-year-level deep-sea demon whale, one that had withstood the heavenly tribulation that had carved a blockade on the Spirit Beast Ascension Channel at the plane's origin, Chen Zhou could not bear to waste its value. "Dismantle everything and bring it back," he said. Huo Wuji acknowledged the order with a motion of his hand. "Yes." Chen Zhou listened as Huo Wuji continued. "Huo Tianshu has applied for the Independent Crustal Traction Plan. He believes that for the upcoming establishment of the Holy Machine Beast Empire, the Star Luo Continent, Heaven Do Continent, and Douluo Continent need to be merged." Purple Armor and B. Baishan have submitted reports on fluctuations in the Abyss Plane. The permissible passage range and energy thresholds of the Abyss Channel are expanding. They don't want to wait. They hope to launch a preemptive swallowing campaign against the Abyss Plane. There is nothing else. Huo Wuji's pale silver hair showed no sign of fatigue. As a machine beast warrior and former city lord of Time City, he had been built for endless administration. Chen Zhou had entrusted him with almost everything. Aside from communicating major strategic directions, Huo Wuji's authority in the Jisho Chamber of Commerce was second only to one person and outranked 10,000. He would likely play a major role in the future Holy Machine Beast Empire as well. Chen Zhou couldn't help but recall the cast of characters among the Machine Beast leaders. Lan Jia alone when things began, Hai Wuliang's reckless arrogance, Yun Taishi's cold, impulsive style, Hu Shatian tired of ruling and longing only to lead troops, Golden Claw God, the all-rounder, whose oversight of the plane's information for the Shadow Project prevented him from forming the obvious partnership with Huo Wuji. The politics had always been messy, but none of that mattered now. Note this down, Chen Zhou said, settling into a sofa instead of Huo Wuji's office chair and pouring himself a pot of tea. Approve all of Huo Tianshu's expenses, as long as it doesn't affect the Machine Beast warriors' ability to reshape their bodies. Only by merging the continents can citizens uniformly see the superiority and logic of new education and scientific training. He let the tea steam between them. Don't keep clinging to those distorted educational methods of the past. The era advances with science. Any force that obstructs history's wheels must be suppressed. He paused, tracing the teacup rim with a fingertip. As for Purple Armor and the others, hold them back for now. The more the Abyss Plane thrashes, the bigger the fish will net when we finally cast. Xuanli told me the Douluo Plane's planetary core was only recently reborn, and its spatial and natural authority hasn't stabilized. Let those fools leap around a little longer. Once I've taken down the demon realm, I'll give Xuanli a reward and then deal with them. The office fell into a quiet that felt almost like a held breath. The mechanical dragon beast's electronic eyes threw slashes of light across the corridor. Huo Wuji's gaze flicked, almost unconsciously, to the crescent-shaped scars on the alchemist's collarbone, Silver Dragon King wounds, the edges still smoldering with traces of starlight. This subordinate understands, he said, and with a soft chuckle, his finger traced through the datapad. The Machine Beast race's unique energy patterns converted Chen Zhou's commands into encrypted orders in an instant. Chen Zhou cleared his throat and shifted the topic. About the reclusive families, what's your opinion on handling them? A blue light flowed through Huo Wuji's optical lens as he reached for a holographic projection. Dozens of scarlet points hovered over a three-dimensional map of Donghai City's outskirts, each a stronghold of a reclusive family. The Wind Sword sect dismantled their ancestral shrine on the day they surrendered, he said, tracing one of the points. Images from yesterday sprang up across the screen. But the Yuanan family is different. They requested an audience with you, Master. An audience? Chen Zhou set his teacup on the sandalwood table. The porcelain gave a crisp clink. Morning light pierced the mist outside the window and dusted the floor. The faint glow of alchemy runes shimmered in his eyes as he regarded the projection. Huo Wuji explained. During initial negotiations, because the Yuanan clan was deeply entangled with Shrek Academy, the option offered to them was to become your slave clan master. However, considering the demon realm situation, we did not force them to declare their stance. Today, they came with the delegation from the reclusive families seeking an audience. Chen Zhou looked down at his reflection in the tea and nodded. Then meet them. The weather vane atop the Alchemy Association headquarters creaked as rain battered the city. The dome of the 12th floor council hall was set with alchemy matrices that simulated the starry sky. Now the simulated constellations hiccuped with the thunderstorm's rhythm. As Chen Zhou entered the hall, 18 representatives from the reclusive families rose in unison. At the far end of the long table, the white-haired Yuanan Gentian stood as well, old, humble, and spared none of the weight of the past. It seems you have all accepted reality, Chen Zhou said, stepping across alchemy runes that traced living gold up his boots and clothing. His gaze swept over the unrolled parchment scrolls on the table, the sole contracts each family had signed last night. The ink still gleamed faintly with wet blood. He took the main seat. A woman from the Seven Treasure Glazed Tile School placed the sole contract before him with practiced deference and stood obediently behind. Led by the Windsword sect, the 18 representatives bowed and saluted in perfect unison. "Greetings, master," they intoned. Chen Zhou tapped the table once. The sound resonated through the vast hall as if striking each of their souls. He looked over their faces, fear, resignation, calculation, finally resting on Yuan and Gentian. The old man's eyes flickered with complex emotion, but above all there was fear. Chapter 315, Tool, Yuan and Yehui, Yuan and Gentian. Chen Zhou spoke slowly. "I suppose you've already decided which option to take." Yuan and Gentian's voice cracked. "Sir's insight. My son and I discussed it through the night." The old man's hand trembled as he made his choice, tears falling. "We choose the second option. If my poor granddaughter, Yuan and Yehui, cannot endure it, then so be it. At least, she won't have to live in fear anymore." Yuan and Gentian's withered fingers suddenly clenched the edge of the ebony table. The force of his Tai-Tan bloodline crushed the wood. Splinters pierced his palm, and dark red blood tracked along the alchemy patterns, staining the peacock plume design on the floor with an eerie glow. "But I will not be ignored. One request from this old man." The hunchback straightened, and his clouded eyes flared with a fierce brown light. "When you strike the demon plane, we of the Tai-Tan family must be allowed to take part. We want to help annihilate the demons." Beneath that demand sat deeper feelings. Resentment for Yehui's mother, Yehui, whose arrival had brought such loss to his house, guilt that had driven his son to ruin and finally to suicide. If the demonic taint could be purged from his granddaughter, or if she fell, his hatred could only be aimed at those demons. Chen Zhou looked down at the old man kneeling in the dust. A flicker of something like admiration passed through his eyes, then he straightened into a blank professionalism. "Granted." With a wave, indigo starlight gathered into a miniature alchemy array on the floor. The Windsword sect representative by the side of the hall suddenly dropped to his knees as the array decomposed and reorganized, the spirit-guiding gemstone embedded in his sword. It transformed into a ring engraved with a Tai-Tan totem and rolled to a stop before Yuan and Gentian. "Bring Yuan and Yehui to the laboratory in 3 days." When Chen Zhou rose, every gaze in the deliberation hall turned to him. "Disperse. Huowuji will arrange your future family residences and the obligations you must fulfill." Deep inside the metallic prison, cold walls reflected a hard light. Yuan and Yehui curled in a corner, her body racked with pain. Her fingers dug into her palms until blood welled, but as soon as it touched the floor, an invisible darkness swallowed it. The demon's whispers never stopped. "Surrender. You are the bridge between 2 planes. I will grant you royal purple gold blood. When we conquer this world, you will be my queen here." Alba's whispers were like poisoned silk, binding deep within her soul. The demon lord's will seeped along her bloodline. Every bone in her body ached, but her spirit power fought back like a river in flood. The sealed chains in her dantian cracked inch by inch as energy from the demon plane poured into her meridians like lava, burning her sanity. The world's primal energy formed a vortex, forcing itself into her trembling body, her human shell a sacrifice to open the passage. Whether Alba's promises would be kept, no sane person could say. She was a demon, after all. "Mother." A blurred outline of a woman hovered at the edge of the darkness. Yehui lunged toward it, but the figure always stood on the other side of an unreachable abyss. Her tear tracks had been scorched into blood scabs by the steaming demonic aura. A beast-like sob escaped her throat. Clang, cyan runes flared across the metal wall. Alchemical sigils slithered like living snakes and wove into a net of light around the cell. The heavy door slid open soundlessly. Chen Zhou stepped in, his alchemy robe brushing the shattered demon seal on the floor. His footsteps rang cold in the confined space. The metal chains hummed taut. Yehui's heterochromatic eyes, one crimson, one pitch black, flew up. At the sight of Chen Zhou, the small horns on her head lengthened 3 inches, with a crackling of keratin. Sparks struck the alchemy runes on the ground, sizzling corrosively. "Impressive. At such a young age, you've endured mental corruption for a long time." She had been consumed by the fallen angel spirit, and the battle inside her mind still raged. Compared to the Demon Plane's long-planned campaign, the will of a 17-year-old felt fragile. A golden red light flared in Chen Zhou's eyes. He raised his hand, and a non-human roar tore from Yehui's throat. Her black hair lifted as if in wind, forming countless slithering shadows. Dark purple demonic sigils crawled over her skin, traveling along her veins until they converged on her chest and formed a snarling demon eye. "Are you here to kill me too?" Her voice was hoarse, doubled as if another presence spoke with her. The star patterns on Chen Zhou's robe glowed. His fingertip hovered 3 inches from Yehui's glabella. The demon eye shot out purple-black flames, but they met an invisible barrier and were reduced to ash before they touched his skin. "Kill you?" Chen Zhou let out a dry chuckle and produced a crystal test tube from his sleeve. "You overestimate your importance." He flicked it. The test tube struck the floor with a clear ring. "Your life or death is not my concern. I only promised your grandfather I would deal with a small problem for him." The moment the purple-gold liquid made contact with the light net, the alchemy array reversed. Runes coiled and the chains wrapped around Yehui's limbs like living vines, branding glowing geometric seals on her skin, the God Realm's demon binding technique. Alba's whispers, traveling along the bloodline, were shattered into fragments. Yehui let out a heart-wrenching scream as 2 bulges erupted from her shoulder blades. With the sound of tearing flesh, a pair of incomplete demon wings forced through the seal, only to be shredded into a bloody mist by the alchemy patterns before they could unfurl. Chen Zhou pressed a hand to her head. A silver-white vortex formed in his palm and drew in the spattered demon blood. "Purity is 17% higher than expected," he observed. "It seems the demon plane went to great lengths to prepare for this invasion," he muttered, almost admiring their determination. Their method, cross-spatial bloodline enhancement and crude rapid spirit cultivation, was rough but resolute. With Alba's influence severed, Yehui's autonomy began to return, though her consciousness grew hazy. Chen Zhou's fingertip traced her forehead and a faint blue rune rippled outward like water. The girl's body, eroded by demonic energy, emitted a series of low mechanical hums, as if millions of ancient gears were reconnecting. Chapter 316, Bloodline Stripping. It will hurt a little when the bloodline is extracted. Chen Zhou casually scattered a handful of silver powder. The particles hung in the air and, in an instant, became hundreds of miniature instruments that glowed with a cold light. They attached themselves to Yuan and Yehui with surgical precision, embedding into her skin, her bones, and even probing the depths of her soul, seeking every trace of demonic contamination. Stripping a young half-demon's bloodline was never going to be gentle. Yuan and Yehui's body arched as if pulled by invisible hands. Her back tensed, and a raw, desperate shriek tore from her throat, but the sound was chewed up by pain and reduced to broken gasps. Her consciousness tumbled into chaos. She seemed to float in an endless black space, hearing nothing but the rush of blood and the demonic whispers that had nested in her veins. Those whispers were being wrenched away, ripped out like a blade scraping bone marrow, severing her connection to the demon inch by inch. It was agony. Every nerve screamed, and more terrifying than the pain itself was the sensation of losing a part of herself. This demonic inheritance was the only legacy from her mother, the source of her endurance under the world's cold stares, the demon power that had sustained her. Alba's voice dimly echoed in her mind, a last, venomous hiss. "You will return. You will beg me." Humph. Chen Zhou's face showed no sympathy. He flicked the energy patterns in the air. Dozens of silver beams shot into her from all directions, cutting off the reflux pathways of the demonic energy. With a muffled thud, Yuan and Yehui's body collapsed to the floor, heaving like a drowning person hauled from the depths. The purplish-black patterns that had crawled across her skin faded rapidly, but a crushing weakness followed, as if a mountain pressed on her spirit. Chen Zhou stood over her with a deep purple crystal in his hand, the demonic essence he had stripped out. Within it, the demon's rage still stirred. Alba's roar could be heard faintly trapped inside. Chen Zhou scoffed. His fingers tightened on the crystal, and the aura inside froze, solidified. Yuan and Yehui lay limp, drenched in sweat, the red flare in her eyes ebbing. The fallen angel spirit, the demonic power that had pumped her spirit to spirit Douluo levels was gone. Her cultivation receded to a 7-ring spirit saint, painfully condensed. At the same time, the Yuanan family's inherited spirit, the Taihan giant ape, grew more ferocious, an atavistic reaction, like a bloodline reasserting itself once freed from demonic corruption. In losing the demon's vessel she had, in a way, become more pure. She coughed and curled into a ball. The phantom of the Titan giant ape rose uncontrollably behind her, brown fur sparkling with golden motes, a sign that her spirit was evolving in a positive direction now that the demonic taint was gone. Her fingertips scraped the metal floor. Her blurred eyes reflected Chen Zhou's hand and the writhing purplish-black energy, the demon's bloodline coiled within the crystal like a flayed serpent. Cough. Why? Her throat felt as if it had been sanded raw. Every word was flecked with blood. Her body convulsed as the ape phantom roared, and her spirit meridians reorganized, pain rivaling the feeling of every bone being crushed. She couldn't understand it. They should be enemies. He had destroyed Shrek Academy, which had stood for 10,000 years, so why help her? Why would the man who ruined Shrek reach out a hand? Chen Zhou sealed the demonic essence into a crystal container and tilted his head at her. The indigo alchemy array beneath his feet turned, casting shifting light across his face. Because your Yuanan family is useful. He tapped the ground with his toe. Dozens of silver light bands rose from the array and coiled around Yuanan Yehui, binding her trembling body. As compensation, he said, your father, your grandfather, even your clansmen will be qualified test subjects, pawns and pioneers for my exploration of the unknown. The crystal vibrated, and the purplish-black energy inside surged. Through the remaining bloodline connection, Alba's projection forced itself into being. The Demon Lord's phantom swelled until it nearly filled the cell's ceiling. Ignorant ant! Alba's roar shook the metal walls. You have no idea what you are stealing. Chen Zhou snapped his fingers. The cell's dome split open, and thousands of dark golden gears poured down. The machine components, designed on the Machine Beast continent, automatically assembled as they fell, forming a mechanical cage that trapped the demon's phantom in midair. Sparks flew as the gears meshed, and those sparks carried the destructive aura of the God Realm's Thunder Tribe. Noisy, Chen Zhou said, and flicked a fingertip. A wisp of silvery white flame leapt into the cage. Alba's phantom twisted and dissolved like oil paint eaten by acid, and finally thinned into black smoke that the gears crushed into nothing. He turned toward the exit and paused. Someone will take you to see your father later. You're free. Those condescending words left Yuanan Yehui stunned. She sat in the cold silence for a long time, tasting the bitter irony. Free? Freedom bought with the enslavement of her entire clan? In truth, she was not important enough for the Yuanan family to pay such a price only for her. The fate of becoming a slave clan was the price many families paid to survive. Because of the Yuanan family's deep ties to Shrek Academy, they would now be saddled with dangerous tasks and obligations. It was a grim bargain, but one she suspected was never negotiated for her sake alone. Chen Zhou left the East Sea City dungeon and made his way toward the Supreme Research Group. Whenever he spoke of Huo Tianshu, he could not help but admire him. Every world produced unique minds, limited by their era, resources, or circumstances, yet some still found new paths and accomplished the impossible. Huo Tianshu might not be the greatest intellect in the Thunder Tribe's history, but he was certainly the most scientifically minded man on the entire Machine Beast continent. In the main laboratory of the Supreme Research Group, 36 holographic screens floated in a ring above the circular hall. Huo Tianshu's mechanical body calibrated readouts with 7 researchers, data streaming like a waterfall across his electronic eyes. The dim lab hummed with focused energy. Today's bonus chapter situation. Popularity bonus, 281,360. Did not meet requirements, no bonus chapter. Average subscription bonus, 4245. Did not meet requirements, no bonus chapter. Reward bonus, 2118,500. Adds 3 chapters. Still owe 2 chapters. Group number 3527487. Chapter 317. The Seed of the Plane, My Lord. As the mechanical life form turned, its joints clicked with the precise sound of meshing gears. The circular energy receiver on Huo Tianshu's head flickered. You've come at just the right time. The mathematical model for the plate movement of the Douluo continent has just been verified. Chen Zhou raised a hand and tapped the light screen floating before him. On the three-dimensional map, orange-red zones marked weak points in the continental shelf. He frowned at three heavily flagged locations along the west coast of the Heaven Dew Empire. So many concentrated energy release points. This is the optimal configuration. Huo Tianshu's metallic finger swept across the projection, and the continental model instantly decomposed into hundreds of colored layers. If 72 geocentric stabilizers operate in unison, the stress waves they produce will cancel out in the deep-sea trenches. The metal palm clenched. The continental model shuddered and merged with a low rumble. The error will not exceed 3 kilometers. That's precise enough to build a cross-sea spirit-guided train passage. Chen Zhou nodded, slipped on the robe reserved for scientific researchers, and asked, "How long until completion and the activation of the Continental Plate Movement Plan?" Huo Tianshu's mechanical pupils narrowed into thin slits. All geocentric stabilizers can be deployed within 7 days, but before activation, Lord Xuanli must reinforce the planetary core a second time. Right now, the continental shelf's load-bearing capacity is still 0.03 percentage points below the safe threshold. Starlight condensed at Chen Zhou's fingertips, tracing several nodes on the map. Have Xuanli finish it within 2 days, but the energy fluctuations caused by crustal traction already accounted for. Huo Shu brought up a new projection. A translucent energy barrier rose along the coastline. The composite spirit-guided shield furnished by the 7 treasure-glazed tile school, together with the soundwave matrix modulated by the deep-sea demon whale clan, will absorb 87% of the dissipated energy. The remainder, he pointed to several blue light spots on the map, will be harvested as activation energy for the abyss plane detectors. A sharp alarm suddenly blared through the laboratory. The projection screen in the southeast corner automatically enlarged, showing a spatial rift forming 500 miles off the East Sea coastline. Chen Zhou watched the purple-black energy signature flash through the data stream, and a cold smile tugged at his mouth. It seems our abyss friends can't sit still. Shall we initiate the Venus flytrap protocol? Huo Tianshu's mechanical arm produced a miniature control panel. 2nd through 7th spirit-guided legions are standing by. Wait. Chen Zhou moved to the planetary model at the lab's center. Let purple armor and the others continue to appear weak. We'll act once the abyss plane commits more than 30 Emperor-level fighters. Huo Tianshu's vocalizer hummed. Actually, I prefer a more permanent solution. The connection between the abyss plane and the Douluo plane isn't deep enough. If it shatters, we might not be able to absorb all the released energy. That would be a significant loss. Chen Zhou chuckled. Huo Tianshu emitted a mechanical laugh in response. The abyss plane's long-standing incursions into the Douluo plane looked less like invaders than like carefully planned harvesters. Since these preparations are nearly complete, pause the other research for now. Chen Zhou said, "Keep monitoring the gravitational wave signature that's been emanating from this crystal." He tossed the demon bloodline crystal, the one stripped from Yuan and Yehui, to Huo Tianshu. "Anchor this plane and make it our food." The mechanical lifeform's optical sensors flashed with excited data streams. The phrase, "make it our food," carried very different weight depending on who said it and to whom. Under Chen Zhou's command, the Mecha Beast Clan stood preeminent. Without his timely leniency, the so-called Soul Beast Clan would now be nothing but materials on his research table. As for Qiangu and the human representatives, they were marginal. One existence, however, was exceptional. Young Master Xuanli, Chen Zhou's direct disciple and future inheritor. As a star god born from the Douluo Star, Xuanli retained some affinity for humans favored by the plane. Huo Tianshu and Huo Wuji had tacitly agreed that energy-type planes like the Demon Plane and the Abyss Plane would feed both Xuanli's growth and the Douluo plane overall. But Chen Zhou's words revealed his true intent. The Abyss Plane would nourish the Douluo plane, while the Demon Plane would belong to the Machine Beast continent, to the Mecha Beast Clan. Huo Tianshu's mechanical fingers unfurled like a lotus. 6 scanning beams enveloped the purple crystal. The lab dome descended, deploying a honeycomb array of instruments that formed a 12-fold analysis matrix around the artifact. The purple-black energy inside began to actively evade the probes, opening escape channels that wove like a biological neural network. Interesting. Static crackled from Huo Tianshu's vocalizer. This isn't just a simple bloodline crystal. It's a coordinate beacon encrypted by plane laws. He projected a hologram, magnifying the nano-level patterns within the crystal. What had looked like chaotic energy veins, when played back at 700 times speed, coordinated and flowed like a school of deep-sea creatures, spontaneously reorganizing into spatial runes. Chen Zhou pressed Huo Tianshu's arm. Stop. Third observation mirror. Focus 27 degrees left of the crystal core. When the image froze, both of them saw a foreign object buried deep in the energy vortex. A golden seed fashioned from demonic sigils, its surface rippling with law fluctuations utterly different from those of the Douluo god realm. The seed of the plane. Chen Zhou's pupils tightened. Alba actually hid the core key for devouring other planes inside the bloodline, Huo Tianshu said. No, Huo Tianshu's analysis fans word. Based on calculations, the demon plane is likely a plane that grows by plunder. The plane key may not be a single-use core, but a broadcasting beacon that harvests plane location information. His joints vibrated as analysis beams etched dense, quantitative formulae across the crystal's surface. 23 probes extended from the mechanical arm, assembling a beehive-like force field cage around the artifact. The evasive purple-black energy was compressed into a viscous liquid that emitted dying screams within the barrier. My lord, observe. Huo Tianshu displayed a spectrum analysis. The energy escape trajectory fits the interplane faith transmission model. This seed has absorbed the despairing emotions of at least 3 distinct civilizations. Through the bloodline factor, it continuously influences inheritors' consciousness and minds, infecting them over generations, so their location information can be transmitted to the demon plane at specific moments. That lets the demon plane home in on the Douluo plane's coordinates. With the demon bloodline and fallen angel spirit inheritors working for centuries, the demon plane is now close to the Douluo plane. By the time of Yuanan Yehui's mother's generation, the fallen angel, her mission had become to open a channel to the demon plane. Chapter 318, Daily Life on the Abyss Plane. Chen Zhou nodded. He had seen operations like this before, mad sorcerers treating other universes as test sites. Then we'll keep developing the plane passage stabilizer. Before we destroy the Abyss Plane, my warriors will have a grand feast. To Chen Zhou, the demon plane was already served on a plate. Huo Tianshu agreed, looking equally unconcerned. Far to the west of the Douluo continent lay a forgotten wasteland where a lead-gray mist hung year-round, and exposed rock outcrops sprawled like the calluses of some giant beast along the coast. 6,000 years ago, the collision between the Sun-Moon continent and the Douluo continent tore open a rift in space-time. An abyss passage cleaved through the mountain range like a festering wound, constantly vomiting the hungry denizens of another plane. Once, the Blood God Legion's spirit masters had made this place their most tragic monument. They built walls of flesh and blood, using their spirit true bodies to choke each abyss tide. At level 1 alerts, the roar of their defensive spirit tools could shatter clouds for 100 miles. During legendary Blood Moon level tides, the Legion detonated entire formations just to seal the devouring of 108 Abyss Emperors. Abyss carapaces had piled into hills, and so many spirit tool masters were lost, they couldn't even leave tombstones until the Federation's flag was ground to dust under the steel treads of the Jisho Chamber of Commerce. Now dark alloy city walls replaced spirit power barriers. Purple Armor, Vanguard General of the Armor Beast tribe, stood on a watchtower. A 3-meter-tall mechanical figure, his optical lens coldly sweeping the passage entrance. Electric blue light ran along the seams of his armor, and the Swarm Spirit Tool missile system on his shoulder could run 1,000 trajectory calculations the moment an abyss creature dared to stick a head out. 37th Probe Strike. Predicted scale, ant level, he reported. B. Baishan's mechanical fingers traced the holographic sandbox. The Thunder Tribe's city defense cannons turned in silent, precise arcs. 3,000 machine beast warriors activated their weapon modules at once. When the first Abyss Blade Mantis tore through space, it was met by a crossfire web that covered the sky. Electromagnetic sniper cannons pierced the cores of command-level creatures. Self-detonating drones swarmed into the regenerating wounds of abyss worms. Ground assault troops' laser swords remained unstained by vile blood. A roar from the 108th Layer Emperor echoed from deep in the passage, but the killing aesthetics of machine civilization had written the rules. Here, death held no tragedy, only absolute efficiency. The cold iron phalanx intoned a requiem of blood and fire. Purple Armor's mechanical hand crushed the head of the last blade mantis. A purplish-blue fluid leaked between his fingers, hissing corrosive pits into the scorched earth. His lens fixed on the rolling black mist deeper in the passage. More violent spatial turbulence was brewing. Armor Beast Vanguard forces, 1st and 2nd squads, fall back 500 meters. Prepare for a hive saturation strike. The muzzles along the alloy rampart pivoted, bearings whining as they engaged. Bibaishan's sandbox predictions spiked. The energy reading for Abyss Layer 72 broke historical peaks. 3 abyss demonic dragons, mountain-sized, ripped spatial rifts, their bony wings bound in dark red law chains, plain permissions personally granted by the Abyss Saint King. Boom. When the first plasma shell detonated against a demonic dragon's chest, the air over the wasteland was momentarily evacuated. Defensive alchemical runes flared across Purple Armor's plating, and he held his position against the shockwave. His data link bridged into the Machine Beast Warrior's consciousness network. 3,000 minds coalesced into a single razor-sharp decision in quantum communication. In the name of the Lord, crush them. 6 lower-level Abyss Emperors surged out of the passage. After months of contact, the Abyss plane had adapted to saturation artillery. It could only break through by throwing out high-end combat power to resist long enough to let other creatures pour through. War is logistics. It is foundations. On both counts, the Machine Beast Legion had the advantage. Bibaishan stood on the wall with his emerald green crescent blade at his side. As one of the few combat-type Machine Beast warriors in the Thunder Tribe, he excelled at commanding small-scale fights. The machine race had long been weak, the Thunder Tribe weaker still. Their survival on a devastated Machine Beast continent had depended on a continuous succession of extraordinary warriors, technological superiority, and surprise infiltration tactics. Now, awakened and summoned by Chen Zhou, the destined war Mecha King, Bibaishan looked out at the Armor Beast Tribe soldiers he had once revered and now counted as his own. In his 8 lives, he had never fought such a wealthy, well-supplied war. Continuous artillery salvo, plasma-focused cannon locked. Ancient strategy says, win by surprise, finish by the ordinary. If the Abyss plane tried to withstand the barrage and pour masses through the passage, they had to rely on elite units to hold the line, and once those elites died, no number of lesser creatures could withstand the artillery. The outcome had been scripted by Bibaishan. The enemy could only be forced to play its part. This was the highest form of fight by the book. He tapped the control panel as energy readings climbed. The corpses of abyss creatures stacked outside the passage were already obstructing the assault routes, exactly the moment he'd been waiting for. Bibaishan pressed his earphone. Initiate furnace protocol. The base of the alloy wall answered with a roar. 360 geothermal converters spun up together, channeling core energy through superconducting conduits to the main cannon. Huo Tianshu had designed the weapon for abyss physiology. It could raise the terrain within a 10-mile radius to temperatures rivaling a star's surface. As the purple-black energy tide struck the defenses for the 7th time, Bibaishan gave the order, fire! The wasteland turned molten red. Air ionized within a breath. The 3 demonic dragons vaporized into purple smoke before a scream could form. The shields of the 6 Abyss Emperors flared and burned like tissue paper. The life-preserving artifacts embedded in their carapaces detonated one after another. For the first time, the creatures of Abyss Layer 72 felt the helplessness of ants in a cataclysm. They burned. They were gone. Chapter 319, Portal to the Demon Plane. Impossible! The lead Abyssal Blade Master ripped off its 3rd pair of appendages. This is not the power of the Douluo plane. Its final words were swallowed by a cascade of pure white light. When the aftershocks of furnace faded, the path the abyssals had charged along was a sheet of vitrified glass. The hulking remains that had once seemed immortal and indestructible were gone as if expelled by a god. Cooling steam hissed from the seams of purple armor's plating. His optical lens swept over the still writhing rift in space. The abyssal holy monarch has learned his lesson, he observed. Baishan, still staring at the yawning passage beside him, received a light jab to the chest from purple armor. When do we launch the general offensive? I'm getting tired of firing cannons every day. Soon, Baishan glanced at him. Having survived the hardest years of the Thunder Tribe's wars, he had little patience for banter, even with a beast race veteran like Purple Armor who had been born long after his own death. How soon is soon? How soon is soon? Purple Armor pressed. Soon is soon. Baishan waved a hand and absently touched the crescent blade at his side. You machine race are unbearable, Purple Armor snorted. At some instant, his fist blades snapped into his hands. Looking for a fight? Blades flashed and metal rang. The clash of fist blades cut through the wasteland's hush. On this gravel plain at the northwest corner of the Douluo continent, 7 inverted metal pylons had been driven into the ground in a Big Dipper formation. At the center, a 30-meter gateway emitted a sickly red glow. Oxidized iron filings sifted from the riveted plates like metallic blood. Suspended at the arch's center, a demon crystal drew in something unseen. Each pulse of red light sketched a clearer star track inside it. Increase rotation to the 3rd tier of the underworld scale, Huo Tianshu intoned, his voice carrying the steady thrum of turbine pressurization. The towering steel colossus, over 3 meters tall, knelt at the gear assembly, panels peeling back to reveal the Star Dough Empire's most precise soul-guiding instruments. When the meter needle crossed into the red, blue light flared from his eyes and tangled with the crystal's red glow, sending purple arcs crackling through the air. Chen Zhou's silver robe whipped in the energy storm. The machine beast Huo Tianshu released a metallic roar as gears, pistons, and solar rays retracted like a tide going out, exposing bronze-colored skin beneath. The last piece of chest armor reconfigured into shoulder plates, Huo Tianshu stepped forward in a human guise, red hair shoulder length. Report, my lord, he said. The demon plane's directional coordinates are fixed. The planar passage can be opened at will. Open the passage. Chen Zhou's voice was quiet, but it carried like a bell. All 7 supports vibrated at once. From cracks in the ground flowed a viscous purple-black magma, not fire, but compressed demon energy, etching intricate sacrificial runes across the earth. Each stroke of the sigils seemed to writhe. Chen Zhou raised his right hand. Indigo starlight streamed from his fingertips, a cold counterpoint to the writhing demon energy. Where the 2 forces met, a shriek rent the air. Spatial temporal anchor confirmed, Huo Tianshu reported. Energy resonance matched. Planar barrier weak point locked. Chen Zhou pressed his palm to the ground and the alchemy matrix flared, expanding to cover 1,000 meters. The crimson runes were overridden by silver-white geometric patterns, the machine beast civilization's highest crystallization, the realm key, the device that could tear open planar seams by force. Activate. The single word rippled through the field. The sky darkened. The gateway erupted in blinding red light, and a vortex, more than 100 meters wide, spun the clouds into a whirl. Spatial turbulence shredded rock, air, even light. In the vortex's depths, a crimson world hung faintly visible, a sky soaked in blood, an earth rent by lava fissures, immeasurable twisted shapes bellowing in the abyss. The demon plane, Alba's domain, glimpsed through the tier. Passage stabilized, Huo Tianshu said. Streams of data flowed through his optical array. Estimated duration, 12 hours. 12 hours will do. Chen Zhou smiled and raised his left hand. Machine beast warriors rose from every direction across the wasteland, thousands of them. The armor beast tribe glowed with crimson charge light, shoulder cannons primed and laser swords humming. The tiger leopard tribe snarled, steel fangs glinting and backpack machine guns extending. Wave tribe warriors bore twin halberds with silver-blue currents rippling over wave-patterned armor. Thunder tribe fighters' engines thundered, arcs of electricity dancing across their blades. The machine race stepped on light wheels, energy cores blazing pure white. Warriors. Chen Zhou's voice streamed through the quantum network into every consciousness sea. It was calm, unadorned, but absolute. The certainty in it pushed every system into maximum combat readiness. Destroy the demon plane. Reforge the machine beast continent. For a breath, the wasteland was silent. Then it erupted in earth-shaking mechanical roars. For our lord. Haiwuliang raised twin halberds. His 19th level, peak combat aura surged like an inverted ocean across his gilded machine body. Roiling waves of law carved into his plating surged along the blades. The grinding of gears quickened. As the blood-red vortex expanded to its designed limit, it snapped into a stable rhomboid passage. Through that gate, the legions under Alba's crimson clouds were already massing. Countless demons with fleshy wings, hefting weapons forged from lava. Even through the barrier, their roars carried like thunder, enough to burst ordinary ears. Energy synchronization complete. Huo Tianshu's mechanical arm reconfigured into a hexagonal control console. Teleportation sequence initiated. Chen Zhou's robe flared with starry patterns. When his toes rose from the ground, 7 indigo beams shot up from the Big Dipper supports and braided into a gargantuan alchemy array at the zenith. Under that light, runes bloomed across the armor of the front ranks. Planar adaptability sigils Chen Zhou had etched into them before deployment. Armor Beast First Legion, Breakthrough. His command was crisp. As combat commander, Hu Shatian had no intention of personally joining the assault. His raw power could rupture the very barrier they needed. Still, his golden hair streamed as he accepted Chen Zhou's order and began issuing commands of his own. The Machine Beast Empire had its general directing the tide. Now all that remained was to pour into the demon plane and do what their lord had decreed. Chapter 320, Fighting to Sustain, Slaughtering Demons, Plundering Cores. At Hu Shatian's command, the thrusters on the backs of the frontline armor beast warriors spat eerie blue flames in unison. These heavy mechs moved with agility that belied their size and charged into the plane passage. Their shoulder cannons reached full charge the instant they emerged into the sky of the demon plane. Hundreds of quantum disintegration bombs, primed and humming, streaked toward the demon army. The blood-red dome of the demon plane cracked with dazzling blue-white fissures. The armor beast warriors deployed force fields slammed into the lava ground, leaving circular craters in their wake, and the disintegration bomb's energy storms swept across 1,000 meters. Low-level demons didn't even have time to scream before they were reduced to twisted scraps by quantum-level annihilation. Second Tactical Echelon, push into Combat Zone 3-7. Hu Shatian's calm voice crackled through the comms. Wave Tribe warriors broke through on the flanks. Wherever their twin halberds struck, demon soldiers fell like stalks of wheat. These ion halberds were made for close combat and vibrated at high frequency, effortlessly tearing through the scales that demons prized. Machine Beast warriors, a metallic torrent, advanced dozens of miles through the demon army, sweeping everything aside. But the true test was only beginning. The ground shook violently. From the sea of lava rose a giant city forged from bones and black iron, its walls etched with crimson demon runes. The gate, carved with tormented faces, yawned open, and 12 demon lords, each more than 10 meters tall, emerged from the pouring black mist. Those must be Alba's royal guards. Should the generals move in? Hu Shatian asked Chen Zhou. Wait a little longer, Chen Zhou replied, watching the battlefield projection. Let the soldiers gain some cross-plane combat experience. The first demon lord charged into the machine beast formation. 4 arms wielded a giant flaming axe, a lightning whip, an ice war hammer, and a poisonous mist scythe. Each swing bringing localized weather changes. It made the mistake of attacking where the armor beast tribe held the line. 6 black iron armor beast vanguards closed in and formed the 6-pointed star formation, the brainchild of the prodigious armor beast general Golden Claw God. Their practiced coordination and the clash of blood crystal spears against quantum shields flattened 3 lava hills with shockwaves. Before the demon lord could taunt, an electromagnetic net threw over its wings. Gravity anchor hooks shot from the warrior's shoulders, and under its stunned gaze, the beast was torn into 6 smoking black fragments. Tactical maneuver B741 complete, the lead armor beast radioed. Its mechanical claw crushed the still-beating demon heart. Confirmed kill, demon lord level unit. A horn-like shriek answered from the rear of the demon army. The blood-red mist compressed into 12 tornado pillars linking earth and sky, and an astonishing number of high-level demons poured from each vortex, Alba's true Imperial Guard in obsidian-heavy armor. But Hai Wuliang looked down on them from the sky with twin halberds merged into one, and a monstrous tide roared across the sulphurous world. When the halberds fused, the spatial fabric of the demon plains strained. The true meaning of water, flowing on the blades, Huo Tianshu's conceptual weapon refined from 360 planes, revealed its form. It was not ordinary water, but a weaponized concept, a transformation of fundamental physics into slaughter. Raging sea surge, break! Hai Wuliang roared. An inverted sea hanging in the sky collapsed downward. Every drop was compressed heavy water, whose vacuum trails vaporized demons in their paths. The obsidian armor of the Imperial Guard proved as fragile as paper before this conceptual ocean. The lava began to subside. The 12 blood-red tornadoes were crushed by sheer mass. High-level demons swept up in the storms had no time to cast saving arts. Hai Wuliang's gilded machine body glittered in the center of the waterfall. When his halberd trembled for the last time, the battlefield had become a bowl-shaped crater 20 kilometers across. Hai Wuliang's task was clear. Clear all high-end combat forces that could influence the Machine Beast warriors' operations. In that moment, every pillar of the Machine Beast race understood Chen Zhou's strategy. They were using the Demon Plane to repair the Machine Beast continent, using the Demon Army to temper and evolve the Machine Beast warriors, and fighting across planes to seize the plane core. 3 gains with one brutal campaign. As demons died, countless energy particles converged onto the Machine Beast warriors who had slain them, an inheritance and law granted by the Machine Beast continent. Constant battle, constant slaughter, constant evolution. Hu Shatian watched with admiration and fanatic intensity, then resumed calm command of the engagement at the 1,000-strong level. For him, this was training as much as war. He sought no rank or power, only to lead troops, to aid Chen Zhou, to strengthen the Machine Beast Clan, to stand tall in the world and endure. Lava churned in the cracks, sparks like millions of crimson fireflies dancing beneath the blood-red sky. Demon Lord remnants were strewn across the field. Black blood hissed as it soaked the scorching rock and writhed, trying to reform. Each attempt was crushed by Machine Beast warriors spread across the battlefield. Continue the advance, Hu Shatian ordered, cold and precise through the network. The Armor Beast tribe's heavy formations rolled forward like mobile steel fortresses. Every shoulder cannon volley tore great gaps through demon ranks. Wave Tribe close combat units moved like silver-blue lightning on the flanks, each strike surgically cleaving formations. Charging Demon Lords were intercepted by Black Iron Vanguards in the 6-pointed star formation the moment they reached the front, their combined might ripping through high-level defenses like a hurricane. As the fight wore on, Machine Beast morale climbed. Each warrior who killed a demon absorbed energy from the remains, drawing strength from the enemy's demise. Fight to sustain, slaughter demons, plunder cores. Hu Shatian advanced the army calmly and steadily. This war king of the Tiger Leopard tribe, tempered by glory, decline, betrayal, and fellowship, now displayed extraordinary strategic and tactical skill. The moderate Black Iron Armor Beasts were the Legion's steel torrent, crushing obstacles. The proud Wave Tribe Machine Beast warriors were the spearhead, cutting through enemy formations. And the cold-blooded Tiger Leopard warriors formed the defensive lines on the flanks, leaving enemies no refuge. Today's additional update situation, popularity bonus update, 121,360 did not meet requirements, no bonus update. Average subscription bonus update, 42/45, did not meet requirements, no bonus update. Reward bonus update, 218,500, did not meet requirements, no bonus update. Basic 2 updates completed. If there are no surprises, these will be the only 2 updates today. Group number 305-27487.